Chapter 76. When Zhang Qiuming and old Luo talked about the situation, not only was Fan Shouwu stunned, even Zhang Meng was a little dumbfounded. If the two of them didn't mention this matter, everyone wouldn't have thought about it. Now that they mentioned it, everyone's minds suddenly became active. If they went up the mountain during the day and encountered the nightmare eagle, they would definitely die. Going up the mountain at night was difficult to walk on the cliff, and it was also quite dangerous. It was hard to say who would be smashed down by falling rocks. At this point, everyone realized that the biggest problem wasn't that the cliff was difficult to climb, but that it was too dangerous. Fan Shouwu's face was bitter as he glanced at everyone. He lowered his voice and said, "I must go to the top of the mountain. Now, everyone think about whether we should go up the mountain during the day or at night." When everyone heard this, they sighed helplessly. No one dared to make this decision. Of course, what everyone thought the most was, since going up the mountain during the day and at night was so dangerous, then they shouldn't go. When Fan Shouwu saw that no one spoke, he lowered his head and pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. "I'm guessing that during the day, the nightmare eagle will definitely fly out. As long as it happens to fly over our heads, it will definitely see us. It's too dangerous to do this. I'm thinking, why don't we all go at night? The nightmare eagle should be resting at night. When we climb the mountain, as long as we are careful, it shouldn't be a big problem." When he said this, Fan Shouwu looked at everyone again and said slowly, "I've decided to go up the mountain at night." When everyone heard this, they didn't say anything. There was nothing much to say. It was the same whether it was day or night. It was a matter of luck. If they went up the mountain during the day, if they were lucky, the nightmare eagle would rest for a day and not fly out. Everyone could go up the mountain safely. If they went up the mountain at night, if they were lucky, they could find a safe way up the mountain. Everyone could go up the mountain safely. Since it was a matter of luck, then let's go for it. As for whether they went up the mountain during the day or at night, it didn't make any difference. Seeing that no one had any objections, Fan Shouwu said in a low voice, "All right then, let's all get ready and go up the mountain now." When everyone heard this, they immediately began to pack their things. After a while, the group began to climb up under the lead of Fan Shouwu. The mountain was steep and it was night time. Everyone climbed very slowly. They didn't dare to get too close to each other. They could only wait for the front to be safe before they could climb up from the back. When climbing the mountain, it was naturally impossible for Fan Shouwu to lead the way. This time, it was old Luo who led the way. Old Luo, who was walking at the front, checked every rock in front of him one by one for fear that a rock would fall down. Only then did he take a step forward. Just like that, the group's speed was not much faster than a snail's crawl, but there was nothing they could do about it. Zhang Meng looked at the mountain wall and thought to himself, "It's only because everyone knows martial arts that they can climb up bit by bit. If it were an ordinary person, even if they were a mountaineer, they probably wouldn't be able to climb up." Almost everyone was on tenterhooks. As long as there was even the slightest movement, they would definitely be scared out of their wits. They were afraid that a rock would fall from above. Most importantly, no one had a safety belt, so they could only rely on luck. When they first climbed up the mountain, Zhang Meng also thought about safety belts, but at this time, where could he find so many ropes? Although some people had ropes with them, there were too few of them. Who should use them was a problem. In the end, there was no need for ropes. Everyone relied on luck. On this rock wall, Fan Gongzi and Prince Zhang were useless. As long as they fell, they would all become minced meat. Zhang Meng walked at the back. He was mainly afraid that someone would fall. Although he wasn't very familiar with these people, he couldn't really watch them fall and become minced meat. As for the falling rocks, Zhang Meng wasn't afraid. Even if they fell on him, it wouldn't affect him much. Old Luo climbed in first place, Fan Shouwu was second, and Zhang Qiuming was third. The rest of the people lined up like a long dragon, climbing towards the top of the mountain. Although the mountain path was difficult to walk, Everyone had martial arts. Although they weren't very good, climbing this mountain was no problem. However, although there were only a few hundred meters left, and it didn't sound that far, a few hundred meters of cliff wasn't that easy to climb. Everyone climbed for a few hundred meters all night, but they still didn't reach the top. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, Zhang Qiuming was already sweating from anxiety. If they couldn't climb up before dawn, it would be terrible if the Eagle of Nightmares was a guy who liked to wake up early. He wanted to urge old Luo in front to hurry up, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. Old Luo was already doing very well. After climbing the cliff for a whole night, although they encountered many moving rocks, he led everyone around them. So far, there wasn't a single rock that they stepped on that fell. If they increased their speed, old Luo couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be any rocks falling. Just as everyone was climbing with all their might, just as they were about to reach the top, an eagle's cry came from above. Then, everyone heard the sound of wings flapping. Old Luo, who was at the front, was the closest to the top, so he could hear it the clearest. When he heard the eagle's cry, his heart suddenly sank. A chill spread from his heart to his whole body. His hands froze on the spot, and he didn't even dare to move. Old Luo held his breath and listened carefully to the movements on the cliff. At this moment, he felt that his surroundings were quiet. It was so quiet that he could hear his own heartbeat. Old Luo could even hear the cold sweat on his forehead and the slight sound of it falling on his clothes. At this moment, all sound seemed to have disappeared. Only the sound of wings flapping on the top of the mountain kept echoing. After a while, another eagle's cry came from the top of the mountain. However, this eagle's cry was much further away from everyone. Old Luo knew that the Eagle of Nightmares had taken flight. Now was the time to decide their fate. As long as the Eagle of Nightmares flew towards them, there was no doubt that it would discover them. When that happened, everyone would be finished. When he heard the Eagle of Nightmares cry, Fan Shouwu felt a tinge of regret. Was it worth it for him to do this? Just as he thought of this question, Miss Fu's figure and that peerless face appeared in his mind. At this moment, Fan Shouwu's blood seemed to be ignited again. When he thought of how he was doing this for Miss Fu, he couldn't help but feel excited. Worth it, definitely worth it. As long as Miss Fu is happy, even if she just smiles at me, it's worth it. With Miss Fu's encouragement, Fan Shouwu's fighting spirit increased exponentially. It was as if his little universe was about to explode. However, Zhang Qiuming couldn't. He had never seen Miss Fu before. He had only heard of Miss Fu's looks. Chapter 77. Zhang Qiuming could only feel cold sweat all over his body. Even his clothes were soaked by the cold sweat. As the mountain breeze blew, he felt as if he was about to be frozen solid. The sweat on his forehead dripped onto his eyes, blocking his vision. Zhang Qiuming did not dare to move. He did not dare to reach out his hand to wipe off the sweat that was blocking his vision. Even though he knew that the slightest movement would not alert the Nightmare Eagle, he did not dare to. Zhang Qiuming wished that he could drill into the rock and hide, so that the Nightmare Eagle would not be able to find him. Just when everyone was scared out of their wits, an eagle's cry rang out in the sky. After hearing this sound, everyone was ecstatic. This time, the Nightmare Eagle's cry was far away from them. No one knew how far it was, but they were sure that the Nightmare Eagle was flying in another direction. After a while, there were no more sounds coming from the top of the mountain. Old Luo let out a long sigh of relief. He retracted his hand that was frozen in the air. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and turned his head to look at the people below. At this moment, almost everyone was doing the same thing as old Luo. Everyone was secretly rejoicing that the Nightmare Eagle didn't fly towards them. After calming himself down, old Luo slowly moved his arms and legs before climbing towards the top of the mountain again. The sky was bright and the vision was better. Coupled with the fact that the Nightmare Eagle had flown away, everyone's climbing speed was a lot faster. When old Luo's head reached the top of the mountain, he suddenly felt a gust of hot air rushing towards his face. This gust of hot air was really hot. Old Luo subconsciously dodged backwards, but immediately felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly reached out and tightly grabbed onto the rock. At the same time, he retracted his head and did not fall down. Seeing old Luo's strange actions, Fan Shouwu, who was behind him, was shocked. He quickly asked in a low voice, "Old Luo, what's going on up there?" Old Luo took a deep breath and calmed himself down from being scared out of his wits. Then, he turned his head and replied in a low voice, "There's nothing on the top of the mountain. It's just too hot." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he finally felt relieved. As long as there were no powerful monsters on the mountaintop, even if it was a hot spot, it would not be a big deal. With his guard up, old Luo took a few more breaths before he poked his head out again to look at the top of the mountain. Hot air hit him in the face again, but this time old Luo was prepared. Although it was a hot spot, it was not a big deal. There was nothing on the top of the mountain. It was bare except for some dark red rock. There was no dust on the rocks either. Since the terrain was high, even if there was dust, it would have been blown away by the wind. After carefully checking that there was no danger at the top of the mountain, old Luo endured the heat and slowly climbed up the mountain. Just now, when everyone was climbing the mountain, they felt that the cliff was very hot. When they reached the top of the mountain, old Luo felt that the top of the mountain was even hotter. Soon, old Luo reached the top of the mountain and whispered to Fan Shouwu, "Young master, come up. There is no danger up there." After Fan Shouwu heard old Luo's words, he immediately used his hands and feet to climb up the mountain. As soon as he poked his head out, he immediately understood what old Luo meant. Hot air hit him in the face. Even if Fan Shouwu was mentally prepared, he still felt dizzy from the heat and almost fell back. Old Luo was already experienced and was prepared. When he saw Fan Shouwu's body fall back, he immediately grabbed his shoulder and pulled him up. Only then did Fan Shouwu escape. With old Luo's help, Fan Shouwu also reached the top of the mountain. Feeling the heat from the rocks under his feet, Fan Shouwu felt a trace of regret in his heart. Old Luo sat on the edge of the mountain. He urged everyone to climb up the mountain while guarding against anyone being blown down by the heat. After an hour, everyone climbed to the top of the mountain without any danger. After Zhang Meng climbed to the top of the mountain, he began to look around. After looking around, he was certain. This was a volcanic crater. This was because he saw that in the middle of the mountain there was a dark hole. From time to time, a trace of red light would appear. Seeing that trace of red light, Zhang Meng had a bad feeling. Looking at the situation, the volcano was about to erupt. Zhang Meng carefully looked at the top of the mountain again, but he did not see the Nightmare Eagle's residence. He was puzzled. He looked around again, but he still did not see anything. He felt even more puzzled. While Zhang Meng was looking for the Nightmare Eagle's residence, everyone was also looking around, looking for the Nightmare Eagle's residence. After a while, Zhang Qiuming said strangely, "Why don't I see the Nightmare Eagle's residence? Do you see it?" Hearing this, everyone shook their heads. Old Luo said doubtfully, "Could it be that the Nightmare Eagle's residence is not at the top of the mountain?" Fan Shouwu shook his head. "That's impossible. If the Nightmare Eagle's residence is not at the top of the mountain, why would it always come here?" At this point, Fan Shouwu's tone paused, and he looked around again before he slowly said, "That's right. I think the Nightmare Eagle's residence should be somewhere that we have not seen. Everyone, rest for a while. Let's look carefully. Since we are already here, we must find the Nightmare Eagle's residence." After Zhang Qiuming heard Fan Shouwu's words, he quickly said, "Since it's like this, let's not be in a hurry to rest. Let's hurry up and find the Nightmare Eagle's residence before it comes back." Fan Shouwu heard this and nodded. He looked around at everyone and said loudly, "Everyone, work hard." As long as we find the Nightmare Eagle's residence, the rest will be easy. At this point, Fan Shouwu paused for a while before continuing. Everyone, don't worry. I'm not a stingy person. As long as this matter is done, everyone will definitely be rewarded. I can guarantee that everyone will be satisfied. After Fan Shouwu finished speaking, he thought that everyone would be energized and move forward bravely. However, he didn't expect that everyone was already dizzy from the heat. How could they be in the mood to think about rewards? Seeing everyone's dispirited appearance, Fan Shouwu didn't mind. After all, it was too hot here. Even he was too hot to speak. Seeing Fan Shouwu's impassioned tone, Zhang Meng was also very impressed. The temperature here, according to his guess, was at least 40 degrees Celsius. With such a high temperature, if it was an ordinary person, they would have already gotten a heat stroke. Fan Shouwu, this guy, still had the energy to give a speech and encourage everyone. He could be considered a talent. However, from the looks of it, the only person who was spirited was Fan Shouwu. As for the others, even Zhang Qiuming, their heads were drooping, and they appeared to be dispirited. Chapter 78. After Fan Shouwu's simple mobilization, everyone began to move. The mountaintop was very large. Logically speaking, they should split up to search faster. However, in this situation, no one dared to split up. If the Nightmare Eagle were to return, they could gather together and look after each other. Although they couldn't guarantee that they would be able to defeat the Nightmare Eagle, even if they were to die, they would die together. It was too hot on the mountaintop. In such a short time, everyone felt that their clothes were completely soaked in sweat. Old Luo raised his head and looked at the sky. It was still early in the morning. The sun hadn't completely risen. When the sun rose and the mountaintop was already hot, then, thinking of this, old Luo hurriedly walked in front of Fan Shouwu and whispered, "Gongzi, let's hurry up and search. If the sun rises, I'm afraid that everyone won't be able to stand it." Fan Shouwu was stunned when he heard this. He immediately reacted and called everyone to hurry up and search the mountaintop. Everyone heard old Luo's words and didn't dare to delay. They all hurriedly stood up and began to search along the mountaintop. In fact, there was nothing on the mountaintop. There were rocks everywhere. Everyone was just searching for underground passages. It was just a simple search. In addition, the terrain was relatively flat, so the search speed was quite fast. Although they couldn't split up to search, everyone lined up and put some distance between each other. Then, they searched together. The search area wasn't small. Old Luo stood in the innermost part of the team, which was near the center of the mountaintop. Everyone was lined up, so he was closer to the center. Although it was only about 20 meters, the heat increased exponentially. At this moment, old Luo felt like he was walking in a steamer. No, even if it was a steamer, there should at least be some steam inside. But there was nothing here, only hot air. Although they only walked for a short while, old Luo already felt a little dizzy. He felt that his body had been squeezed dry by the heat. There wasn't even a bit of water vapor. Even his clothes that were originally soaked in sweat had now dried. After walking for a while, old Luo felt that this situation was getting worse. Even his vision became a little blurry. Even gasping for breath was a little difficult. Old Luo knew that this couldn't go on. If this continued, he might faint. Thinking of this, old Luo was about to shout at Fan Shouwu when he suddenly felt something wrong. He quickly turned his head and saw that one of his guards had silently fallen down. Old Luo saw this and knew that the guard must have fainted from the heat. He hurriedly endured his discomfort and walked towards the guard. Old Luo saw that the guard's face was red and his eyes were closed. At this moment, he didn't dare to neglect. He quickly reached out and grabbed him and walked to the mountaintop. As the leader, Fan Shouwu had been walking at the back of the group, observing the movements left and right. Among all the people here, his martial arts was the highest, and his inner energy was also the strongest. Although the mountaintop was very hot, he was still able to get used to it. Zhang Qiuming's situation was similar to his. After all, they were walking on the mountaintop's edge, and not in the innermost area like old Luo and the others. Zhang Meng naturally walked behind Fan Shou. Although the mountaintop was very hot, Zhang Meng didn't feel anything. Zhang Meng was also carefully looking at the mountaintop. He wanted to find the Nightmare Eagle's residence. Just as he was looking around, he saw old Luo carrying a person and quickly walking towards him. Old Luo yelled as he walked. Gongzi, little Lu fainted from the heat. When old Luo came over, Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming hurried over to check on little Lu's condition. After a while, Fan Shou sighed, "He's fine. It's just that it's too hot here," and he fainted. When old Luo heard this, he hurriedly asked, "Gongzi, what should we do next? Should we continue searching?" When Fan Shou heard this, he was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly stood up and said softly, "Should I go inside and take a look?" When Zhang Qiuming heard Fan Shou's words, he also hurriedly stood up, "I'll go too." When Fan Shou heard this, he nodded and didn't stop him. He took the lead and walked towards the center of the mountaintop. As they got closer to the center, the heat increased. The closer they got, Fan Shou felt the heat increase by several times. Originally, it was already very hot at the mountaintop's edge. Unexpectedly, after walking for less than 20 meters, the heat almost doubled. Fan Shou stopped and turned to look behind him. Then, he looked in front of him. He couldn't help but be aghast. They had only walked so close, but the heat had already increased by so much. Not only was the temperature in the air high, but the heat of the rocks under their feet was also increasing. Originally, they were wearing shoes. With the soles of the shoes as a barrier, the heat couldn't be transmitted. But now, they could feel that the soles of their shoes had become very hot. Feeling the scorching heat and looking at the distance in front of him, Fan Shou couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that his thinking was too simple. Not to mention encountering the Nightmare Eagle, just the temperature here was probably unbearable. Feeling the temperature here, Fan Shou suddenly remembered the purpose of his visit. Black feather cloak. If he had a black feather cloak at this time, that would be great. After walking for another 20 meters, just when Fan Shou felt that his face was being roasted by the scorching heat, Zhang Qiuming, who had been walking behind him, suddenly shouted, "Fan Gongzi, don't walk. It's too hot here. If you continue walking, I'm afraid there will be a problem." Hearing this, Fan Shou couldn't help but stop. He really couldn't walk anymore. At this moment, he felt that it was difficult to breathe. The heat he breathed in made him feel even hotter. Fan Shou turned his head to look at Zhang Qiuming. He saw that his face had already turned red and his eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't help but be shocked. He knew that he had reached his limit. If he continued walking, he might really be in trouble. Thinking of this, Fan Shou didn't dare to delay. He hurriedly turned around and pulled Zhang Qiuming back. Zhang Meng stood at the edge of the mountain peak. Seeing Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming scout ahead, he was about to chase after them when he suddenly stopped. The temperature here was so hot. He felt that with Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming's martial arts, they wouldn't be able to walk far before having to retreat. Then what was the point of him going? Sure enough, Zhang Meng saw that Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming were walking quite fast at first. However, they gradually slowed down after walking for a short distance. In the end, they only walked for 40 to 50 meters before stopping. Chapter 79. Fan Shou and Zhang Qiuming returned to the edge of the mountain peak. Originally, they felt that the edge of the mountain peak was very hot, but now they actually felt very comfortable. After taking a few deep breaths, Zhang Qiuming's complexion recovered a little. He felt that they could not continue searching. If they continued, they would faint from the heat even without the Nightmare Eagle's help. Thinking of this, Zhang Qiuming raised his head and looked at Fan Shou. He sighed and said slowly, "Fan Gongzi, Do you still want to continue searching? Hearing this, Fan Shouwu turned his head to look at the middle of the mountain peak, then looked at the cliff below him and sighed. You rest for a while, let me think. After saying this, Fan Shouwu turned around and looked at the entire mountain peak. His heart was unsettled. After going through so many hardships, they had finally climbed to the top of the mountain. However, they did not expect the environment to be so terrible. What should they do next? Go back? They were really unwilling. They were already here and were only one step away from finding the Nightmare Eagle's residence. Don't go back? The temperature here was still so high. Not to mention the others, even he himself could not stand such high temperature. What should they do? Fan Shouwu really hesitated this time. If they went back directly, he would not be willing. If they stayed here, they would not be able to continue searching. After thinking for a while, Fan Shouwu turned around and said slowly, We have already gone through so many hardships and climbed to the top of the mountain. If we don't search, how can we be willing? Therefore, I have decided that everyone will search at the edge of the mountain peak. If we are lucky, the Nightmare Eagle's residence will be at the edge of the mountain peak. After saying this, Fan Shouwu sighed and continued. If we don't find the Nightmare Eagle's residence at the edge of the mountain peak, we will return immediately. Hearing this, everyone's spirits were lifted. In such a hot place, everyone had wanted to leave long ago. However, Fan Shouwu did not give the order, so everyone could only continue searching. Now that they heard Fan Shouwu's words, they felt a glimmer of hope. In fact, Fan Shouwu also wanted to leave. Not only was it hot here, but he also had to worry about the Nightmare Eagle returning at any time. Furthermore, he didn't know if there were any other monsters here. Although Fan Shouwu did not know if there were any monsters, he was certain that as long as a monster appeared on the mountaintop, it would be extremely dangerous. It could also be said that with their martial arts skills, as long as they found a monster on top of the mountain, they would all be in trouble. Seeing everyone's excited expressions, Fan Shouwu immediately waved his hand and said loudly, Let's set off now and circle around the edge of the mountain. If we still don't find any traces of the Nightmare Eagle, we'll immediately descend the mountain. Yes. The guards hurriedly responded and turned around to continue their search. This time, no one dared to go deeper. After all, Xiao Lu's example was right there. If anyone dared to go deeper, their ending would definitely not be any better than Xiao Lu's. Even though they were only searching within 10 meters of the edge, the heat was still unbearable. Halfway through, everyone's body was no longer sweating. In such a hot place, the water on the body was almost evaporated, so how could there be sweat? At this time, Fan Shouwu also noticed that something was wrong. The people who were originally talking and laughing were now silent. They all hung their heads and looked listless. The two guards that Zhang Qiuming brought along had the lowest martial arts skills among these people. The two of them almost felt like they were swaying as they walked. These guards, including old Luo, were all ordinary martial warriors. They had not cultivated any internal strength. In this situation, the time they could hold on was even shorter. Fan Xingwu knew that they could not continue walking. If they continued to walk forward, he was afraid that these guards would not be able to hold on. Thinking of this, Fan Shouwu turned his head to look at Zhang Qiuming. However, he saw that Zhang Qiuming was also looking at him with a face full of anticipation. Zhang Qiuming saw Fan Shouwu looking over and hurriedly said, Fan Gongzi, are we still going to continue? Fan Shouwu heard this and sighed. He shook his head. Tell everyone to stop. We will now find a way down the mountain. Zhang Qiuming heard this and a trace of ecstasy immediately appeared on his face. He hurriedly called out to the guards in front of him, telling them to quickly stop. They could finally go down the mountain. As long as they could avoid the Nightmare Eagle when they went down the mountain, this nightmarish journey would be over. After hearing Zhang Qiuming's shout, the guards who had been muddle-headed from the heat suddenly became clear-headed. At this moment, Zhang Qiuming's voice was like the sound of nature in the ears of the guards. Let's stop for a while. Let's go down the mountain. They could finally go down the mountain. After the guards heard Zhang Qiuming's shout, they hurriedly stopped and surrounded Zhang Qiuming and Fan Shouwu, afraid that they would change their minds. Looking at these dispirited guards, Fan Shouwu also knew that it was time to leave. Brothers, are you tired now? If you are tired, let's take a rest. If you are not tired, let's go down the mountain immediately. After the guards heard Fan Shouwu's words, their originally listless eyes suddenly lit up and they all shouted out loudly. We are not tired, we are not tired. Hearing the impatient shouts of the guards, Fan Shouwu turned his head and looked at the middle of the mountain peak again. He raised his hand above his head and waved it down the mountain. Since you are not tired, then immediately find a way down the mountain. We will go down the mountain now. After the guards received the order, they immediately walked towards the edge of the mountain peak. When they reached the edge of the mountain peak, they began to look for a way down. It was such a steep cliff. Sometimes, going up the mountain was easier than going down it. Everyone walked along the side of the mountain and searched for a while before they finally found a place where they could climb down. Just like when they went up the mountain, they followed old Luo and climbed down the mountain. Just as old Luo climbed down the mountain peak, he felt that the scorching air had dissipated by a lot. When the mountain wind blew, he actually felt a little cool. This cool feeling made old Luo, who was originally dizzy, suddenly feel energized and his mind clear up. Old Luo took a few deep breaths and began to climb down the mountain using his hands and feet. When everyone saw old Luo go down, they lined up in a row and followed him down one by one. Looking at the dejected Fan Shouwu, Zhang Qiuming could not help but persuade him, Fan Gongzi, although we did not get the black feather cloak this time, I think if Miss Fu knew that you were willing to take such a big risk for her, she would definitely be touched. Hearing this, Fan Shouwu smiled bitterly and shook his head. You don't have to comfort me. If we didn't get it, then we didn't get it. What else is there to say? Hearing this, Zhang Qiuming shook his head and said with certainty, It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. Chapter 80. Zhang Qiuming couldn't help but advise Fan Shouwu when he saw how dejected he was because he didn't get the black feather cloak. Fan Gongzi, actually, you've already done very well. How many people are willing to come to such a dangerous place? I think that when Miss Fu finds out about this, she'll definitely praise you greatly. Fan Shouwu shook his head and laughed bitterly. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's talk about how to get back. Although everyone had climbed down the cliff, the danger wasn't over yet. The nightmare eagle had already flown out. As for when it would return, no one knew. If by any chance they were discovered by the nightmare eagle when they were descending the mountain, they would still be in danger. When everyone heard this, the joy of escaping was instantly swept away. Only then did they remember that the danger wasn't over yet. Seeing everyone's nervous expressions, Zhang Meng couldn't help but laugh and say, Actually, everyone doesn't need to be so worried. As he spoke, Zhang Meng pointed in a direction and continued speaking. The nightmare eagle flew in that direction. We'll hide in the opposite direction and wait for the nightmare eagle to fly back. Then we'll be safe. When Fan Shouwu heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. He walked forward and patted Zhang Meng's shoulder and said with a smile, Okay, we'll do as the fierce brothers said. When the nightmare eagle flies back, we'll descend the mountain. Zhang Qiuming frowned and said, What if the nightmare eagle doesn't fly back for a while? When Zhang Meng heard this, he laughed. If the nightmare eagle doesn't fly back after dark, then we don't need to wait for it. While it's dark, we'll just descend the mountain. I think that after dark, it won't be easy for the nightmare eagle to find us. When Zhang Qiuming heard this, he suddenly understood. How could I forget about this? Okay, since it's like this, we'll do as the fierce brothers said. If the nightmare eagle doesn't return, then we'll descend the mountain after dark. Since they had already decided to descend the mountain after dark, everyone found a slightly hidden place and rested. After a day of torment, everyone was tired. Not only that, they were also thirsty. Being hungry was easier said than being thirsty. After staying in such a hot place for so long, everyone was so thirsty that their throats were smoking. Even if their stomachs were uncomfortably hungry, no one thought of eating. When the sky darkened, the nightmare eagle still didn't return. Seeing how everyone was so thirsty, Fan Shouwu was to immediately descend the mountain. Going down the mountain was much easier than going up the mountain. Naturally, the speed was much faster. Not long after they had left the mountain, they were already quite a distance away. Looking at the somewhat blurry mountain peak behind them, Fan Shouwu sighed. The plan this time was a complete failure. At this moment, an eagle's cry suddenly came from the horizon. Although it was very far away, the sharp cry still clearly traveled into everyone's ears. Hearing this eagle cry, everyone's originally relaxed hearts were once again raised. Hearing this cry, old Luo, who was walking at the front, shouted at Fan Shouwu, "Young master, let's quickly find a place to hide." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he bitterly laughed. "Where can we hide?" There was indeed no place to hide. There was no forest here, nor was there thick dust. If they wanted to hide, there was really nowhere to hide. Seeing that Fan Shouwu didn't reply, old Luo hurriedly continued to shout, "Let everyone lie down and see if we can hide." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand at everyone. "Everyone quickly lie down and don't make a sound." After the guards received the order, they didn't dare to be slow. At a time of life and death, if they were slow, they would definitely be courting death. Although there wasn't a thick layer of dust on the mountain path, it was fortunate that everyone's bodies were dirty beyond recognition. Lying on the ground, if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell them apart from rocks. In the distance, the eagle's cry came again. When everyone heard the sound, they knew that it was much closer and felt even more afraid. As everyone waited anxiously, the nightmare eagle came closer and closer. Under the faint moonlight, the people lying on the rocks could already see the black shadow in the sky. At this moment, the nightmare eagle didn't flap its wings. Instead, it spread its huge wings and glided in the sky. Looking at the nightmare eagle that was getting closer and closer, everyone was so scared that they almost stopped breathing. They could only feel their hearts beating so violently that they felt as if they would jump out of their throats if they were not careful. Very quickly, the nightmare eagle flew above them. At the same time, it began to flap its huge wings. After a moment, it began to circle back and forth above them. Seeing this situation, everyone knew that something was wrong. The nightmare eagle must have discovered something, which was why it was circling in the sky. Although they knew that the nightmare eagle had discovered them, no one dared to move. At this moment, everyone wished that they could drill into the rocks and hide. Seeing that the nightmare eagle was flying lower and lower in the sky, Zhang Meng felt that it had discovered them. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng picked up a small stone and held it in his hand. As long as the nightmare eagle flew lower, he would attack. The nightmare eagle naturally didn't know what everyone was thinking. It only relied on its powerful eyesight to discover that there was something different about this rock. The lower it flew, the more it discovered that there was something different about this rock. Just as it wanted to fly lower, suddenly, a sharp pain came from its body. It hurriedly looked down and saw that a rock had fallen in front of it. Someone actually attacked it. This was an unforgivable thing. The nightmare eagle was enraged. It immediately cried out and wanted to rush down and burn the person who attacked it to ashes. However, it didn't do so. Instead, it flapped its wings and flew away. After the nightmare eagle flew far away, Fan Shouwu sat up and stared blankly at the place where the nightmare eagle disappeared. He felt that what happened just now was like a dream. The nightmare eagle had clearly discovered them, so why did it fly away? At this moment, Zhang Qiuming, who was beside him, also slowly sat up. He looked at the place where the nightmare eagle disappeared and asked curiously, Fan Gongzi, what happened just now? Did you see it? Fan Shouwu shook his head. At that time, everyone was lying on the rocks. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly, let alone look back. On the other side, old Luo also asked curiously, It's really strange. I clearly felt that the nightmare eagle had discovered us. Why did it run away in the end? Zhang Qiuming saw that no one knew what was going on, but he wasn't disappointed. Instead, a trace of joy appeared on his face. No matter what the reason is, in short, the nightmare eagle has flown back. I think, for a short period of time, the nightmare eagle won't come out again. Let's take this opportunity to quickly descend the mountain. Chapter 81. Everyone was discussing the reason behind Nightmare Eagle's departure. Zhang Meng, on the other hand, was thinking about the direction of his future development. This time, he hadn't fought much. It wasn't because he was afraid of anything, but because he wanted to understand more. As someone who had just arrived in this world, if he didn't understand more about this world, his future path wouldn't be easy. Although he was the chief of the Twin Oxen Mountain stronghold, Zhang Meng didn't want to be a bandit chief. Zhang Meng felt a wave of disgust whenever he thought about how he had led his uncles and his buddies who were as close as brothers to burn, kill, and rob, and how his buddies had walked behind him while baring their fangs to kill and set things on fire. Even if he didn't have the ability, he definitely wouldn't lead his uncles down that path. Moreover, he now had the ability to lead them down a righteous path. Zhang Meng was confident that under his leadership, the people of the stronghold would walk towards the light. He would let them live under the light and be upright people. He would let everyone give him a thumbs up and praise him when they heard about the Twin Oxen Mountain stronghold. This was what Zhang Meng wanted. If the people of the stronghold walked down the path of evil under his leadership and lived a life of burning, killing, and robbing, that way they could earn money quickly, but it would definitely arouse the hatred of the world. It was fine if he was in this world, as he could definitely suppress them with his strength. However, the stronghold relied on him. If he left this world, then the stronghold would definitely be slaughtered by those righteous people. At that time, when everyone heard the news, they would clap their hands and celebrate the destruction of this evil stronghold. Was this really good? Did Zhang Meng really want this kind of result? When he thought about how the people of the stronghold would become like that in the future, Zhang Meng couldn't help but shiver. No, he definitely couldn't do this kind of thing. Then, since he couldn't rely on his strength to lead everyone to do bad things, he could only do good things. He could do things that wouldn't make people hate him even if he left. After walking with Fan Shouwu and the others, Zhang Meng had been thinking about these problems. What should he do to expand and strengthen his stronghold? Of course, the foundation of everything was established in a proper industry. At this point, Zhang Meng already had some ideas in mind. Since the needs of the Magic Empire and the Anwu Empire were different, then he would be a middleman. He would set up an auction house in the Twin Oxen Mountain and auction all kinds of rare items. Zhang Meng believed that with his strength and his auction house, the auction house would definitely be the best in this world. At that time, as long as this plan's plan, the stronghold would definitely become the focus of the world's attention. Although this plan's plan was good, it was still lacking an important part of his plan. Gold coins. If he wanted to build a place that would attract the attention of the world in the stronghold of Mount Xuanyu, he would have to be rather luxurious. Only then could he attract more people. But all this was money's money. And this was the reason why Zhang Meng had stayed with Fan Shouwu and the others until now. Although it would be easy for him to steal some gold coins with his strength, this wasn't the kind of thing Zhang Meng wanted. If he was just a small fry, it would be fine. These people were not good people to begin with. However, if he was asked to do this kind of thing, Zhang Meng felt that he was somewhat unworthy of the martial arts he had obtained. After staying with Fan Shouwu and the others for so long, Zhang Meng hadn't come out empty-handed. At the very least, he knew that the Nightmare Eagle was very valuable. If he caught the Nightmare Eagle, he would definitely be able to exchange it for a lot of gold coins. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng raised his head and looked at Fan Shouwu, who was about to leave. Fan Gongzi, do you really want the black feather cloak? Fan Shouwu was taken aback when he heard this before nodding. The black feather cloak is indeed very important to me. Everyone knew that Fan Shouwu liked the prefectural governor's daughter, Miss Feng. However, Miss Feng didn't have any interest in him. Even when they met, they only nodded at each other. Fan Shouwu had also found a few opportunities to strike up a conversation, but it was useless. Miss Feng, who was known as the Ice Beauty, ignored his attempts to strike up a conversation. It was also because of this reason that Fan Shouwu wanted to do something big to gain Miss Feng's attention. Even if it was just a word, it would do. Fan Shouwu had given Miss Feng many gifts, but without exception, they were all sent back. This made him very depressed. His wishful thinking was that the gifts he gave were too ordinary and unworthy of Miss Feng. That was why they were returned. Since it was because of this reason, Fan Shouwu decided to give her something really good. It was also at this time that he heard about the Nightmare Eagle. The black feather cloak didn't increase defensive attribute. Its main use was as a decoration. It also had the advantage of keeping one warm in winter and cool in summer. Although practitioners didn't like this kind of thing, it was definitely a first-class item for a woman. In the beginning, Fan Shouwu really didn't expect the Nightmare Eagle to be so valiant. If he had known that the Nightmare Eagle was so powerful, he definitely wouldn't have come. Although Miss Feng was beautiful, but what was the use of being beautiful when her life was gone? The crux of this matter was Fan Shouwu. He thought that this trip to hunt the Nightmare Eagle would definitely be successful. Hence, before he left, he couldn't wait to send a letter to Miss Feng. In the letter, he told her that he was going to hunt the Nightmare Eagle for her and emphasized that he would definitely bring the black feather cloak back as a gift to her. It could be said that up till now, if he could turn that letter into nothingness, Fan Shouwu was willing to do anything. He hated that he couldn't slap himself a few times to express the regret in his heart. It was also because of this reason that even though he knew that the mountain peak where the Nightmare Eagle lived would definitely be dangerous, he still wanted to take the risk. Even though he knew that the Nightmare Eagle was incomparably valiant, he still wanted to give it a try. All of this was caused by that letter. At this moment, Fan Shouwu already knew that the plan to hunt the Nightmare Eagle this time was definitely a failure. Failing to hunt the Nightmare Eagle wasn't a big deal. It wasn't important. The key was how to explain the contents of that letter. What about the black feather cloak mentioned in the letter? Once he thought about how Miss Feng would look at him with that kind of disdainful gaze in the future, Fan Shouwu had a feeling of utter despair. His face was completely lost. How was he going to face Miss Feng in the future? When the two of them met, was there still a need for him to greet her? Seeing Fan Shouwu's constantly changing expression, Zhang Meng stepped forward and patted his shoulder, asking again, "Fan Gongzi, is that black feather cloak really important to you?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he stared blankly for a while before slowly nodding his head. Important, extremely important. If I don't have that black feather cloak, then I won't have the face to meet Miss Feng in the future. Chapter 82. Seeing Fan Shouwu's desolate expression, Zhang Meng smiled. This was the expression he wanted. As long as Fan Shouwu wanted the black feather cloak, then everything would be easy to handle. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng smiled and patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder. "Fan Gongzi, if I had the Nightmare Eagle's feather, how many gold coins would you spend to buy it?" Fan Shouwu was startled when he heard this. After a while, he asked doubtfully, "How do you have the Nightmare Eagle's feather?" Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. He then asked, How about it, Fan Gongzi, if I had the nightmare eagle's feather, would you be willing to buy it? At this time, Zhang Qiuming also heard Zhang Meng's words and was momentarily stunned. After a while, he suddenly grabbed Zhang Meng's arm and said loudly, "The fierce brothers, as long as you have the nightmare eagle's feather, I'm willing to pay 2,000 gold coins." Zhang Meng turned his head to look at Zhang Qiuming and smiled as he shook his head. During this period of time with them, he had always been paying attention to these things, afraid that he would be tricked. "Prince Zhang, 2,000 gold coins is too little. If you want 5,000 gold coins, I can get it for you right now." Zhang Qiuming was startled when he heard this. He turned his head to look at Fan Shouwu and then said loudly, "Okay, I promise you. As long as you can find the nightmare eagle's feather, I'll give you 5,000 gold coins." Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction when he heard this. He only wanted to use the nightmare eagle's feather to exchange for some gold coins. As for who would pay for it, that was none of his business. Fan Shouwu stared blankly at the two and listened to their conversation. For a moment, he didn't react. At the end, he suddenly grabbed Zhang Meng's arm and asked urgently, "The fierce brothers, do you have the feather of the nightmare eagle?" Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Fan Shouwu didn't hesitate and said loudly, "The fierce brothers, I want to buy those feathers too." Upon hearing this, Zhang Meng looked at Fan Shouwu with some difficulty. "Fan Gongzi, I wonder how many black feather cloaks can be made from a nightmare hawk?" Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu hurriedly replied, "The nightmare eagle's feathers are very large. Actually, if you make a black feather cloak and add other supplementary materials, you only need 30 feathers." When Zhang Meng heard this, he calculated in his heart. The nightmare eagle's body was very large. 30 feathers could be used to make a black feather cloak. A nightmare eagle definitely couldn't have only 30 feathers. Upon seeing that Fan Shouwu also wanted to buy the nightmare eagle's feathers, Zhang Qiuming hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Fan Gongzi, it's better if you don't buy it. I bought the nightmare eagle's feathers because I wanted to give them to you." Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu smiled and shook his head. He reached out and patted Zhang Qiuming's shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother, since you came with me this time, I can't treat you unfairly. I'll buy your nightmare eagle's feathers as an apology to you." Upon hearing this, Zhang Qiuming hurriedly shook his head and refused. "No, I'll buy it. Besides, I came here of my own free will. It has nothing to do with Fan Gongzi. Even if there's a problem, it has nothing to do with you." Upon hearing this, Fan Shouwu shook his head. "Brother, there's no need to say any more. I understand your intentions. If I didn't ask you to come here, I'm afraid you would have left long ago. In the end, this is all my fault. If I didn't insist on obtaining the nightmare eagle's feathers, no one would have gone to the top of the mountain to risk their lives. I'll remember your good intentions, brother, so there's no need to be polite with me." Upon seeing the two of them pushing back and forth, Zhang Meng didn't want to listen anymore. He smiled and said, "Wait for me here. I'll be back soon." After saying this, Zhang Meng once again walked towards the top of the mountain. Zhang Meng didn't use any powerful movement skills. He just walked up the mountain step by step. Although he was just walking, his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing Zhang Meng walk so fast, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming looked at each other and saw a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. After a while, Zhang Qiuming looked at Fan Shouwu in confusion and said, "Just who is he?" Fan Shouwu shook his head. "I don't know. He only said that he was from Twin Bull Mountain." Zhang Qiuming said, "Fan Gongzi, do you know of Twin Bull Mountain?" Fan Shouwu shook his head. "I don't know. I've never heard of that place." Zhang Qiuming looked in the direction that Zhang Meng left in confusion and muttered to himself, "It's really strange. His martial arts are so high, but he's still a nameless person." Fan Shouwu didn't say anything. He just silently looked in the direction that Zhang Meng left. He kept praying in his heart that Zhang Meng must obtain the nightmare eagle's feather. At the very least, he must obtain a black feather cloak to report to Miss Fu. Otherwise, where would he put his face in the future? Zhang Meng left the crowd and quickly arrived at the edge of the cliff. Looking at the steep cliff, he stomped hard on the ground and shot towards the top of the mountain like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Meng's height had already surpassed the top of the mountain. He slowly drew an arc and slowly landed on the ground. After landing on the top of the mountain, Zhang Meng was puzzled. He was already so strong. Why couldn't he fly? Logically speaking, based on the various novels and television dramas, when one reached his level, they should be able to fly freely in the air. However, no matter how high he could jump, he still couldn't fly. Why was he unable to do so? Zhang Meng had tried many times. He imagined that he could walk in the air like what was described in many novels. However, without exception, he fell from the sky. Therefore, he was very puzzled. Many of the protagonists in the novels were not as strong as him. They were probably not even 1/10 as strong as he was, yet they could fly. Why was he so strong, yet he could only walk on the ground? Zhang Meng decided that after this matter was over, he must find out the reason behind it. He must find out what was restricting him, preventing him from walking in the air and showing the demeanor of a strong person. Collecting his thoughts, Zhang Meng slowly walked towards the crater in the middle of the mountain. As he got closer and closer to the crater, the temperature also increased. However, this did not affect Zhang Meng at all. Although he could also feel that the temperature here had increased, he did not feel any discomfort. Zhang Meng guessed that perhaps his mediation ability was too strong. It directly adjusted him to a state where he could adapt to this temperature. Soon, Zhang Meng walked to the edge of the crater. Here, he could already feel the heat coming from the crater. At the crater of the volcano, Zhang Meng could see that the heat had already covered the entire space. It was as if there was an invisible flame burning, and even the air was constantly trembling. However, this was not what Zhang Meng was concerned about. No matter how high the temperature here was, it had no effect on him. He was only concerned about where Nightmare Eagle had gone. Chapter 83. Zhang Meng was sure that the Nightmare Eagle was near the crater, but he didn't know where exactly. Zhang Meng looked around the crater, but he didn't find any trace of the Nightmare Eagle. He felt a little strange. Where did the Nightmare Eagle go? Could it be that the Nightmare Eagle lived in the crater? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng took a few steps forward and walked in front of the crater. Looking at the raging heat rolling in the crater, Zhang Meng felt that the temperature in the crater was definitely very high. To be on the safe side, he first stood at the edge of the crater and reached his hand into the crater. He wanted to test if the heat in the crater could burn him. However, Zhang Meng's worry was unnecessary. He didn't feel any heat when he reached his hand into the crater. He only felt a gust of hot air spurting out from the crater, causing him to involuntarily raise his hand. Seeing this situation, Zhang Meng was relieved. Since the heat in the crater couldn't burn him, he didn't have to worry at all. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng poked his head into the crater, ready to see the situation inside. Zhang Meng had just poked his head out when a strong gust of hot air erupted from the crater, causing him to almost be unable to breathe. However, this wasn't a problem. Zhang Meng held his breath and slowly looked into the crater. The top of the crater was pitch black, and the bottom was the light of flames. Looking down, Zhang Meng saw a flame burning at the bottom of the crater. However, it was too far away. Even Zhang Meng could only see a little red light. After looking at the situation inside the crater, Zhang Meng looked at the walls of the crater. His main purpose for coming here was the Nightmare Eagle. After looking around, Zhang Meng didn't find the Nightmare Eagle. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. Where did the Nightmare Eagle go? Could it be that it didn't live here? Zhang Meng carefully thought about the other places on the top of the mountain, but he couldn't think of any place where the Nightmare Eagle lived. It seemed like the Nightmare Eagle's residence was still here. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng focused his vision and looked into the crater again. This time, he looked very carefully, almost inch by inch. In the end, he finally found something different. At the edge of the crater, there was a pitch-black hole. This hole was in the midst of the boiling heat. If one didn't look carefully, it wouldn't be easy to see it. Seeing this huge black hole, even if the Nightmare Eagle's body was huge, it shouldn't be a problem for it to crawl into this hole. Thinking of this, Meng Jing calculated the distance between the two sides. Only then did he exert force with his feet and shot out like a bolt of lightning. He streaked across the rolling heat waves in the crater and flew towards the black hole. In the blink of an eye, the black hole appeared in the crater. This place was indeed very big. It was about 30 to 40 meters high and 20 to 30 meters wide. Even Zhang Meng felt tiny as he stood in the middle of it. Following the passageway that led to the depths, Zhang Meng did not hesitate. He directly strode forward and walked inside. After walking for a short while, Zhang Meng heard the sound of wings flapping. He knew that he had come to the right place. The sound of wings flapping must have come from the Nightmare Eagle. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng's spirit suddenly shook, and he quickened his pace again, walking into the passage. The passageway wasn't very deep. After walking for a short distance, Zhang Meng saw an even bigger space in front of him. The Nightmare Eagle was lying in that space. When the Nightmare Eagle heard someone barging in, it screeched and stood up. In the past, when he saw the Nightmare Eagle, it was always flying in the sky. Due to the distance, he couldn't tell how big it was. Now, Zhang Meng could see it clearly. The Nightmare Eagle was really big. When it stood up, it was probably 7 to 8 meters high. When it flapped its wings, Zhang Meng estimated that if it fully opened its wings, it would be 20 meters wide. When the two sides got closer, Zhang Meng realized that the Nightmare Eagle's feathers were not actually black, but dark red. However, it was very dark, so when it flew in the sky, everyone saw the Nightmare Eagle as if it was black. A pair of sharp claws glinted coldly under the illumination of the dark red light. As the Nightmare Eagle moved, its sharp claws scratched out marks on the hard rock. Its curved beak was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, ready to harvest the lives of its enemies at any time. Seeing that someone actually dared to intrude into its territory, the Nightmare Eagle immediately let out an ear-piercing shriek. In the next moment, a raging fire shot out from its mouth towards Zhang Meng. Seeing this, Zhang Meng was overjoyed. Since the prey was in front of him, there was no need to be polite. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng slightly exerted force on his feet and dodged the Nightmare Eagle's flames. In the next moment, he had already shot out. Before the Nightmare Eagle could raise its head, he had already landed on its neck. Just as the Nightmare Eagle was about to raise its head, Zhang Meng stepped on its neck. Its huge body fell to the ground. It struggled with all its might, but it was useless. After struggling for a while, it couldn't move anymore. It could only lie there and let out continuous cries. At this time, even if the Nightmare Eagle wanted to use its fire breath skill, it couldn't. Zhang Meng was standing behind it. Even if it wanted to spit fire, it couldn't burn Zhang Meng. Moreover, Zhang Meng was stepping on its neck. The Nightmare Eagle couldn't even breathe, let alone spit fire. Hearing the Nightmare Eagle's continuous cries, Zhang Meng hesitated whether or not he should break its neck. Zhang Meng looked around the large space. The four walls of the space were empty. There was nothing there. Looking at the ground, Zhang Meng was overjoyed. A large pile of black feathers was neatly arranged in a corner of the space. Looking at the number, Zhang Meng guessed that there were at least a few hundred feathers. Zhang Meng came this time for the Nightmare Eagle's feathers. Since he had these feathers, there was no need to kill the Nightmare Eagle. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng lifted his foot and let go of the Nightmare Eagle. The nightmare eagle was already out of breath from being stepped on by Zhang Meng. If it didn't lift its foot, it would probably die. At this time, Zhang Meng lifted his foot and the nightmare eagle regained its freedom. It stood up abruptly, but didn't escape. Instead, it used its wings to protect a place behind it and let out continuous cries. The nightmare eagle's cries were very loud. In addition to the tight space, the nightmare eagle's cries made Zhang Meng's heart flustered. He stretched out his hand and wanted to push the nightmare eagle to the side. Unexpectedly, at this time, the nightmare eagle saw Zhang Meng's hand and suddenly opened its mouth. A scorching hot flame shot out from its mouth and flew towards Zhang Meng. Chapter 84. Seeing that the nightmare eagle was spitting fire at him, he subconsciously dodged the attack. Then, he punched the nightmare eagle's body. Although Zhang Meng did not know any martial arts, nor did he have any unique skills, the speed of his attacks was as fast as lightning, even if it was a casual attack. Zhang Meng's punch landed on the nightmare eagle's body and sent its huge body flying. Seeing the nightmare eagle cry out in pain as it flew to the side, Zhang Meng nodded in satisfaction. He slowly retracted his fist and looked at the place the nightmare eagle was protecting with its wings. What appeared in front of Zhang Meng were 3 black eggs. These black eggs were very big. He guessed that they were the nightmare eagle's eggs. Then, did that mean that the nightmare eagle was hatching chicks? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng wanted to reach out to help the eggs, but he didn't expect that the nightmare eagle, who was unable to get up from the ground, would spit fire at Zhang Meng again. Zhang Meng took a step back and dodged the ball of fire. Then, he turned around and looked at the nightmare eagle. He thought to himself, "It seems that the nightmare eagle wants to protect these eggs." Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked at the nightmare eagle and pointed at the eggs on the ground, then at the nightmare eagle. Zhang Meng had just pointed at the eggs when the nightmare eagle, who was lying on the ground, suddenly jumped up and spat fire at Zhang Meng again. Then, it opened its sharp claws and charged at Zhang Meng. Seeing the nightmare eagle like this, Zhang Meng was a little angry. He dodged the nightmare eagle's fire and reached out to grab the nightmare eagle's wings. With a forceful snap, the nightmare eagle's wings were broken. The nightmare eagle also let out a cry of pain, but it also aroused its ferocity. After the nightmare eagle cried out, it immediately opened its claws and clawed at Meng Jing. Zhang Meng raised his leg and kicked at the nightmare eagle's claws. After being kicked by Zhang Meng, the nightmare eagle cried out again. Its claws were broken by Zhang Meng's kick. It couldn't stand anymore. After struggling a few times, it fell to the ground again and cried out in pain. Zhang Meng didn't let go and directly punched and kicked the nightmare eagle. The nightmare eagle, who had been beaten by Zhang Meng to the point of howling in pain, was still struggling with all its might at first. It even spat out flames from its mouth, but it was soon beaten to the point where it was on the verge of death, unable to stand even if it wanted to. Zhang Meng gave the nightmare eagle a good beating. Seeing that it was no longer spitting fire or struggling, Zhang Meng knew that if he continued beating it, it would probably die. In fact, Zhang Meng didn't want to kill the nightmare eagle. Since the nightmare eagle's feathers were so valuable, Zhang Meng could keep them. When he needed feathers, he could pluck a few and sell them. Zhang Meng kicked the nightmare eagle a few more times. Seeing that it couldn't move, he ignored it. Zhang Meng sized up the space and looked at the nightmare eagle that couldn't move anymore. He decided to let it go this time and come back after selling you air. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng walked to the pile of feathers and ignored the nightmare eagle. He pondered, how should he take all the feathers away? After thinking for a while, Zhang Meng decided to only take the amount he needed. As for the rest of the feathers, he would leave them here. Since no one could come here and these feathers couldn't fly away, this was the safest place. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng counted 60 feathers and put them aside. After doing this, Zhang Meng tore his outer clothes into strips and made them into rope. He wrapped the 60 feathers up. Zhang Meng glanced at the nightmare eagle that was lying on the ground, unable to move. He felt that there wasn't anything good here, so he immediately picked up the 60 feathers and walked out. The journey back was fast. In a few blinks of an eye, Zhang Meng reached the bottom of the mountain. At this time, Zhang Meng slowed down and walked towards Fan Shouwu and the others. At this time, Fan Shouwu and the others were looking at the mountain peak with doubts. To be honest, Fan Shouwu didn't believe that Zhang Meng could get the nightmare eagle's feathers. If Fan Shouwu hadn't been to the top of the mountain, he might have believed that Zhang Meng could get the nightmare eagle's feathers. However, after reaching the top of the mountain, Fan Shouwu realized that if he wanted to get the nightmare eagle's feathers, he wouldn't just have to face the nightmare eagle. He would also have to face the extreme heat. At this moment, Fan Shouwu could faintly guess that the nightmare eagle lived in the middle of the mountain peak. Fan Shouwu also knew the temperature at the top of the mountain. The closer to the center, the hotter it got. Everyone was already so hot at the edge of the mountain peak. Just walking 20 meters in was already unbearable. Moreover, the edge of the mountain was very far from the center. Through simple calculations, the temperature at the center of the mountain peak was probably too high for people to survive. It was also because of this reason that Fan Shouwu even suspected that Zhang Meng had already been roasted. After all, this kid came out to earn gold coins. For the sake of gold coins, he might have thrown caution to the wind. Even if it was hot, he would still fight. Fan Shouwu felt that in order to get the nightmare eagle's feathers, Zhang Meng endured the unbearable heat and walked to the center. In the end, he walked to the center and fainted, but no one saved him. Based on this calculation, the possibility of him being roasted was very high. Although Zhang Meng hadn't been gone for long, everyone was a little worried. After all, Zhang Meng had saved their lives before. When the earth bear was chasing them, if Zhang Meng hadn't used a tree to knock down the earth bear, they would have been completely wiped out. Old Luo quickly walked to Fan Shouwu's side and said in a low voice, "Gongzi, does the Fierce Brothers have any good ideas to get the nightmare eagle's feathers?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he shook his head. "I don't know either. He just left after saying that." Zhang Qiuming, who had been standing beside Fan Shouwu, hadn't spoken since Zhang Meng left. At this moment, when he heard old Luo mention Zhang Meng, he also sighed. "Ai. If only I didn't let him go. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid that he won't be able to survive this time." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he silently nodded. At this moment, he was also a little regretful. When Zhang Meng left just now, his speed was very fast. This also proved that his martial arts weren't bad. However, the situation at the top of the mountain wasn't something that could be handled with good martial arts. In such a hot place, it didn't matter how good one's martial arts were. Even if his martial arts were better than everyone else's and his inner strength was stronger, how long could he last? How far could he go compared to everyone else? When he thought of this, Fan Shouwu sighed helplessly. Chapter 85. Just as everyone's imagination was running wild, a guard suddenly shouted, "Look, the Fierce Brothers are back." After everyone heard the guards shout, they hurriedly raised their heads and looked towards the top of the mountain. Sure enough, a person was walking towards them from afar. The sky was very dark and the distance was very far. Relying on the fact that there weren't any trees on the top of the mountain, everyone could clearly see the person in the distance. They could only see that it was a person, but no one could see clearly. The guard's shout just now was just a subconscious reaction. Looking at the figure in the distance, as it got closer and closer, everyone realized that there was something different about it. Why was this figure so tall and wide? Seeing this scene, everyone panicked. Could it be that a monster was coming? Seeing such a strange-looking fellow, Fan Shouwu had already ordered everyone to prepare for battle. On this spacious mountain top, if there really was a monster, Running away was impossible. They could only fight. Zhang Meng's speed was very fast. When everyone took out their weapons and prepared for battle, he was already not far from them. At this moment, Fan Shouwu saw clearly that the person was indeed Zhang Meng. The reason why Zhang Meng was so wide was because he was carrying something on his back. At this moment, Fan Shouwu only felt his heart beating faster and faster. He could already faintly feel that the thing on Zhang Meng's back should be the feathers of the nightmare eagle. How was this possible? What about the heat on the mountaintop? What about the ferocity of the nightmare eagle? How could Zhang Meng easily obtain the feathers of the nightmare eagle? Could it be that Zhang Meng was its relative? As the distance between the two sides got closer and closer, everyone could clearly see what Zhang Meng was carrying. The feathers of the nightmare eagle. Zhang Meng carried 60 nightmare eagle feathers on his back and quickly arrived in front of the crowd. He didn't care about the crowd's wide-open mouths and dumbfounded expressions. He quickly walked to the front of the crowd and threw the 60 nightmare eagle feathers on the ground. He turned his head and said to Fan Shouwu, "Fan Gongzi, please take a look. Are these the feathers of the nightmare eagle?" After everyone heard Zhang Meng's words, it was as if they had woken up from a dream. "That's right, I can't be sure if these are really the feathers of the nightmare eagle." Thinking of this, everyone hurriedly gathered around the pile of feathers and began to examine it. Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were no exception. They reached out to touch the feather that Zhang Meng had brought back. Feeling the slight warmth from the feather, they were certain that it was the feather of a nightmare eagle. Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were even more shocked after knowing that this pile of feathers was the real feather of a nightmare eagle. Although they didn't calculate how long Zhang Meng had been gone for, Fan Shouwu felt that Zhang Meng hadn't been gone for long. When he had brought people to climb the mountain, it had taken almost an entire night to barely reach the peak. However, Zhang Meng had only been gone for a short while. Everyone had been chatting here, but they hadn't talked much. In such a short time, Zhang Meng had already made a round trip and actually brought back the feathers of the nightmare eagle. How was this possible? After being shocked, Fan Shouwu raised his head to look at Zhang Meng and asked doubtfully, "The fierce brothers, how did you do it?" When Zhang Meng heard this, he smiled and waved his hand. "That's not important. Fan Gongzi, these feathers are indeed the feathers of the nightmare eagle." Fan Shouwu nodded. "Indeed." At this point, Fan Shouwu thought for a while before continuing. "The fierce brothers, I won't hide it from you. I don't have that many gold coins right now. Can you allow me to return the gold coins to you after I return?" Zhang Meng nodded. To him, there was no difference in returning with gold coins. As for Fan Shouwu, it was impossible for him to renege on his debt. Facing someone who could easily retrieve the feathers of the nightmare eagle, even if Fan Shouwu was a fool, he wouldn't easily offend him over 10,000 gold coins. Zhang Qiuming also stood up and asked doubtfully, "The fierce brothers, you were able to obtain the feathers of the nightmare star. Could it be that you've already defeated the nightmare eagle?" Zhang Meng nodded, agreeing with Zhang Qiuming's words. However, he didn't want to say anything more on this topic. He turned his head to look at Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, "Fan Gongzi, actually I still have a lot of things I want to ask you about. I wonder if that's possible?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he hurriedly replied, "No problem. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. As long as I know, I'll definitely tell you." Zhang Meng smiled. "Fan Gongzi, in this world, what can be considered good stuff? Can you tell me?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he stared blankly. Immediately, his eyes widened as he looked at Zhang Meng in disbelief. "The fierce brothers, could it be that you're looking for good stuff?" Zhang Meng didn't hide it and nodded. "That's right. Our Twin Bull Mountain village is very poor, so I want to build an auction house there to auction off all sorts of treasures in this world." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he stared blankly at Zhang Meng for a long while before slowly speaking. The fierce brothers, although you were able to kill the nightmare eagle, you have to know that in this world, there are many magical beasts and immortal beasts that are more powerful than the nightmare eagle. Most importantly, no matter what kind of treasure appears, it will be accompanied by the appearance of a powerful guardian. The strength of some guardians will be hundreds or even thousands of times stronger than the nightmare eagle. When he said this, Fan Shouwu sighed. The fierce brothers, this path won't work. I know you want to make your village better, but let's change the method. When Zhang Qiuming, who was standing on the side, heard Fan Shouwu's words, he also said, The fierce brothers, if we don't open an auction house, we can do something else. As long as you come to Cyanwood City, no matter what you want to do, I'll support you. When he said this, Zhang Qiuming patted Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, In Cyanwood City, even if I can't protect you, we still have Fan Gongzi. In the south region, I believe that as long as Fan Gongzi appears, there's basically nothing that can't be done. How about it, the fierce brothers, as long as you think about what to do, I'll definitely support you. When Zhang Meng heard this, he shook his head and said with a smile, Thank you for your kindness, Prince Zhang. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do anything. After thinking about it, I can only rely on my abilities to make a living. When Zhang Qiuming heard this, he laughed. The fierce brothers, your martial arts are so high. You can set up an escort agency here, just like the mercenary groups in the Magic Empire. When the time comes, you can deliver goods to merchants. I heard that you can also make a lot of money. Zhang Meng shook his head again. I don't think it's suitable for me to be an escort agency. Right now, I only want to open the largest auction house and let everyone know that the Twin Bull Mountain Village's auction house is the largest and the best. Here, as long as you can think of it, you can definitely buy it. Chapter 86. Although Zhang Meng spoke with confidence, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming were not willing to believe him. However, seeing that Zhang Meng did not listen to their advice, they let it go. Zhang Meng saw that the two of them had stopped persuading him and asked again, If there are any treasures near us, you can tell me. When my auction house opens, if you want to buy something, I will definitely give you the lowest discount possible. After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Meng's words, he could only smile bitterly and shake his head. Then I thank the fierce brothers for their kind intentions. However, I can't remember many of the treasures you mentioned at the moment. How about this, when I go back and hand over the gold coins to you, I will write a detailed receipt. How about this? Hearing this, Zhang Meng hurriedly cupped his fists towards Fan Shouwu and said gratefully, Then I thank Fan Gongzi for your help. The three of them exchanged a few pleasantries before getting the guards to carry the feathers and prepare to descend the mountain. After walking for a short distance, Fan Shouwu suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Zhang Qiuming. He said hesitantly, Since we are already here, should we go and see Lord Mu again? Zhang Qiuming shook his head. It's better not to go. If he knows that we have returned to the mountain peak, he will definitely complain again. Hearing this, Fan Shouwu smiled and nodded. He then waved his hand at the guards. Let's go home. As he spoke, Fan Shouwu had already taken the lead to descend the mountain. His mission could be considered completed. Regardless of whether he had personally obtained the Nightmare Eagle's feathers, at least he had something to report to Miss Fu. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. After descending the mountain, they walked along the flat ground. Before they reached the edge of the forest, the sky was already bright. At this moment, one of the guards who had been scouting ahead suddenly ran back. Fan Gongzi, is there someone in the forest ahead? When Fan Shouwu heard this, he was shocked and hurriedly asked, Are they the people we met at the entrance of the passage? The guard shook his head. No, it's another group. Judging from their attire, they seem to be from the Magic Empire. Zhang Meng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He stepped forward and asked, Is there a female mage among these people? The guard nodded. Indeed, there was a magician among the living people. But he was wearing a cloak, so I couldn't tell if he was a man or a woman. After listening to the guard's words, Zhang Meng was certain that this group of people should be Gerard's group. Thinking of Gerard, Zhang Meng thought of Carter. There were no experts in his mountain stronghold. Although that Carter was not very strong, at least his martial arts were better than the people in the mountain stronghold. If such a person were to be made a guard, he should be able to do it. Thinking of Carter, Zhang Meng thought of Villanica again. If there was a magician in his village, it should be very good. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder and said with a smile, "Fan Gongzi, I'll go take a look. Maybe it's someone I know." Fan Shouwu was stunned when he heard this. He asked hesitantly, "Do you know someone in the Magic Empire?" Zhang Meng smiled and nodded, then walked in the direction the guard pointed. Zhang Meng didn't walk far in the direction the guard pointed. He heard voices in the forest. Hearing these voices, Zhang Meng was even more certain that this group of people was Gerard's group. This was because he had already heard Gerard giving orders. Zhang Meng hadn't walked far into the forest when he heard a voice coming from the tree in front of him. "Who is it?" "This is..." The person in the tree stopped talking halfway, because the person in the tree recognized Zhang Meng. Zhang Meng patted Carter's shoulder. Carter's stagnant strength immediately increased by leaps and bounds. In the blink of an eye, he had already reached the level of a level 5 warrior. Facing such a rocket-like leveling up, everyone in the group, including Gerard, was now imagining that Zhang Meng would pat them on the shoulder and their strength would increase by leaps and bounds. At this moment, the guard hiding in the tree was ecstatic when he saw Zhang Meng. Without saying anything, he immediately jumped down from the tree and walked quickly to Zhang Meng. "So it's you, sir. Do you have any orders?" "I will do it as soon as possible." Seeing the guard's respectful expression, Zhang Meng naturally knew why he was so respectful. However, he wasn't in a good mood. Everyone's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. "Since you want to do something for me, go get Carter and Villanica." The guard was stunned when he heard this, but he didn't dare to ask anything. He hurriedly responded and ran back to the camp. At this moment, Gerard was eating the food that the guard handed over. He was tasteless. He was now thinking about what to do in the future. This time, he had lost so many people. How was he going to explain it when he returned? Logically speaking, losing a few people wasn't important. The key was that Gerard's team's main mission was to investigate. After discovering the Nightmare Eagle, they immediately used a magic scroll to send it over. Their mission was considered completed. However, in order to obtain more benefits, Gerard led the team into the underground passage and lost so many people. Logically speaking, it was normal to lose some people in an adventure. However, Gerard's mission was only to investigate. Gerard was sure that once the family knew about this, his younger brother would definitely take the opportunity to slander him. By then, even if it was normal, it would become abnormal. Thinking of this, Gerard instantly felt frustrated. Especially when he looked at Carter, who wasn't far away, he felt even more upset. Why was he always the unlucky one? Why was it that good things never happened to him? At this moment, the guard who was on sentry duty returned. Gerard was even angrier when he saw that the guard actually dared to return without permission. He berated him loudly. "Who allowed you to come back without my orders? How dare you come back without permission? Are you tired of living?" After hearing Gerard's reprimand, the guard's expression changed. However, he had no choice but to suppress the anger in his heart. He lowered his head and whispered in Gerard's ear, "Young master, that person came back again." "That person came back again? Who? Tell me clearly, who came back?" After saying this, Gerard's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately grabbed the guard and asked, "Are you talking about that person?" The guard nodded. "Yes, that person. I saw him outside just now, so I came back to report." After hearing the guard's words, Gerard said loudly, "Then what are you waiting for? Why aren't you inviting him over? Are you going to let him wait outside?" Chapter 87. After hearing Gerard's words, the guard's face immediately showed a trace of embarrassment. He whispered again, "Young master, that person wants Carter and Valenica to go out to meet him. He doesn't want to come over." Hearing this, Gerard was stunned. After a long while, he stood up abruptly and said loudly, "Let's go. Let me there." Hearing this, the guard did not dare to delay. He hurried a few steps forward and led the way for Gerard. After walking for a short distance, Gerard saw Zhang Meng standing not far away, looking at him with a smile. Looking at the smile on Zhang Meng's face, the nervous Gerard immediately relaxed. He immediately walked a few steps forward and stood in front of Zhang Meng. Brother, ah no, sir." Looking at Gerard's expression, Zhang Meng smiled kindly, "Call me Brother Meng." Hearing this, Gerard rubbed his hands and stammered, Brother Meng, you're here?" Zhang Meng nodded. "I'm here this time to take Carter and Valenica away. I wonder if Master Gerald will agree?" Hearing this, Gerard was stunned. "Brother Meng, why do you want to take the two of them away?" Zhang Meng said, "Because I want to do some business, so I need some help. What do you think, Master Gerald?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Gerard blinked his eyes. "Carter is easy, but Valenica is a bit hard to say. She's a member of the temple. If she leaves without permission, I'm afraid the temple will investigate and things will get out of hand." Zhang Meng looked at Gerard. "The temple? Does Valenica need the temple's approval to leave?" Gerard said, "As long as you join the temple, you're basically a member of the temple for the rest of your life. It's not easy to leave. Until now, I haven't heard of anyone leaving the temple." Hearing this, Zhang Meng nodded. "If that's the case, I'll ask Valenica personally later. If she's willing to leave the temple, I'll inform the temple. If she's unwilling, then forget it." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Gerard couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Although Zhang Meng was powerful, he didn't think that the temple would change the thousands of years of rules because of one sentence from Zhang Meng. It wasn't that no one had ever left the temple, but generally speaking, those who left the temple ended up in a miserable state. Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't speak, Gerard gritted his teeth and suddenly said in a low voice, "Brother Meng, do you still blame me?" Zhang Meng was stunned when he heard this. Then, he remembered that Zhang Meng had added a lot of seasonings to his roasted meat. If not for the fact that he wasn't afraid of those poisons, he might have been poisoned by him. Looking at Gerard's expression, he was probably afraid that he would find fault with him. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked at Gerard and said in a low voice, "How could I forget such a big thing?" Zhang Meng said. Seeing that Gerard's face had turned pale, he hurriedly stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder before continuing. "However, I can give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Do you understand?" Hearing this, Gerard nodded his head vigorously. "Brother Meng, don't worry. I will definitely turn over a new leaf. You must believe me. I won't let you down." Seeing Gerard like this, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction. "In the future, I will open an auction house in Twin Bull Mountain. At that time, I may need your help. So, your performance in the future is very important." Gerard's eyes lit up when he heard Zhang Meng's words. Based on his performance, didn't that mean that if he performed well, Brother Meng would be happy and increase his strength a little? Thinking of this, Gerard's face was already flushed red. He patted himself hard and promised Zhang Meng, "Brother Meng, don't worry. In the future, you will see my performance. If my performance doesn't satisfy you, then don't call me a brother anymore." Looking at Gerard's repeated promises, Zhang Meng understood that it was impossible to make the horse run and not let it eat grass at the same time. So, if he wanted Gerard to do things for him, he had to give him some benefits first. Only when he had some benefits would he have more energy to do things for him. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Gerard's shoulder again and asked with a smile, "Master Gerard, how do you feel?" Just as Zhang Meng's hand touched Gerard's shoulder, Gerard felt an aura coming from his hand, and then it began to move around his body. This strong aura only circulated in his body once before it immediately returned to Zhang Meng's hand. Although the aura from Zhang Meng had disappeared, Gerard could clearly feel that the power in his body had increased by a lot. Gerard was originally only a second-level magic swordsman, and the amount of combat chi in his body was too little. Every time he moved, the aura on his body would be like a breeze, thin enough. But now it was really different. Gerard had just activated his will when the combat chi in his body surged like a fierce wind, instantly covering his entire body. Feeling this change, Gerard had already forgotten to answer Zhang Meng's question. He just circulated the combat chi in his body over and over again, feeling this fierce wind blowing in his body over and over again. It wasn't until Zhang Meng asked him a second time that Gerard realized that all this had happened after Zhang Meng patted him. Thinking of this, Gerard was so excited that he couldn't speak. At this moment, he finally understood. What family elder? What family elixir? What family cultivation method? What family younger brother? All of this was nothing in front of the person in front of him. He had already been judged by the family elders that he had no future in cultivation. Some elders even concluded that the future glory of the Custer family would depend on his younger brother, Lance. But this big brother Meng in front of him made his strength soar in just a breath's time. What was this? This was a living thigh. At this moment, Gerard finally understood why Carter wanted to be his follower when Zhang Meng left. Now Gerard also had this thought. If he followed Big Brother Meng, as long as Big Brother Meng patted him from time to time, then his strength would increase to a terrifying degree. If he didn't hurry up and hug him, Gerard was sure that he would spend the rest of his life slapping himself. Thinking of this, Gerard hurriedly lowered his head, wondering which thigh he should hug from Zhang Meng. Seeing Gerard's unfriendly gaze, Zhang Meng hurriedly took 2 steps back. "Hey, Master Gerald, I'm asking you a question. How are you feeling now?" Gerard heard this and saw Zhang Meng dodge again, so he scratched his head in embarrassment. "Big Brother Meng, I'm very good." Chapter 88. Looking at Gerard, whose face was flushed with excitement, Zhang Meng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "Shao Jia, do your job well. I won't treat you badly. Do you understand what I mean?" Hearing Zhang Meng call him Shao Jia, Gerard was not angry. Instead, he felt a sense of familiarity. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Meng's question, he hurriedly nodded. "Brother Meng, don't worry. I understand what you mean." At this moment, Gerard really understood. In the past, because his talent in martial arts was not strong, he was afraid that his younger brother would steal his position as the successor. But now, humph! As long as he hugged Brother Meng's thigh, nothing would be a problem. As for his talent in martial arts, he was not good enough. Humph! Was this a problem in front of Brother Meng? When he returned to the family, when the elders saw his strength advancing by leaps and bounds, they would be stunned. Especially his younger brother, Lance, after knowing his strength, he would be very disappointed. Seeing Gerard looking at him blankly, Zhang Meng had already guessed that this kid was definitely not looking at him. He was thinking about his own matters. Gerard was dreaming. Naturally, Zhang Meng would not accompany him in his dream. He patted Gerard on the shoulder. "Shao Jia, let's go. I still have things to do." After hearing Zhang Meng's call, Gerard led him back to the camp. As soon as Zhang Meng walked into the camp, Carter saw him. He hurriedly stood up and greeted him. "Brother Meng, why are you here?" Zhang Meng smiled. He didn't want to waste time with nonsense, so he spoke directly. "I remember that you said you were willing to follow me, right?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Carter's eyes immediately lit up. He asked happily, "Brother Meng, are you willing to let me follow you?" Zhang Meng nodded. "I happen to have some things to do and need someone to help me. Are you willing?" Hearing this, Carter hurriedly nodded. I'm willing. What a joke. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? Originally, he was unable to improve his cultivation by even half a step, but Brother Meng just patted him on the shoulder and solved it. For such an expert to be willing to take him in, it was a great thing. Zhang Meng turned to look at Vilanica and asked with a smile, "Vilanica, are you willing to come with me?" After Vilanica heard Zhang Meng's words, her little face suddenly turned red, and she lowered her head and said, "No, if I go with you, the temple will definitely find trouble with you." Hearing this, Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. "Temple, it doesn't matter. As long as you agree to come with me, I will discuss this with the temple. I will definitely not make things difficult for you. Let's talk about this." After listening to Zhang Meng's words, Vilanica suddenly raised her head and asked doubtfully, "How?" Hearing this, Zhang Meng smiled. "How else can we talk about it? Let's just talk about it like that. Anyway, as long as you agree to come with me, I will definitely make the temple agree." Vilanica shook her head. "It's better not. It's useless even if you go to the temple to talk about it. Besides, I only know one type of magic. I still want to stay in the temple to continue cultivating." Hearing this, Zhang Meng nodded. "All right then. When you have thought it through, you can look for me. As for where to look," Zhang Meng pointed at Gerard. "If you want to look for me, you can ask Jie. He might know where I am." Jie. After hearing how Zhang Meng addressed Gerard, Vilanica and Carter were stunned. They turned to look at Gerard, wanting to see his reaction. When Gerard heard Zhang Meng address him as Jie in front of everyone, he blushed a little. However, he immediately remembered that Zhang Meng addressed him that way because he treated him as one of his own. Thinking of this, Gerard proudly straightened his back. Brother Meng called me Jie because he treated me as one of his own. Why didn't he call you guys that? Little Carl, little Wei." Since the matter was settled, Zhang Meng did not want to waste any more time. He waved at Carter. "Then we are leaving." As he spoke, Zhang Meng took the lead and walked in the direction they came from. When Carter saw that Zhang Meng had left, he did not dare to delay. He hurriedly waved at Gerard and the others and chased after him with large strides. Zhang Meng brought Carter with him and quickly rushed back to where Fan Shouwu and the others were resting. Fan Shouwu was wondering what Zhang Meng was doing when he saw that Zhang Meng had returned. Seeing Carter behind Zhang Meng, Fan Shouwu greeted him with some confusion. "The Fierce Brothers, this is?" When Zhang Meng heard this, he smiled and introduced him. "His name is Carter. He will be working with me from now on." Although Fan Shouwu did not understand what Zhang Meng meant by working with him, he understood the general meaning. Seeing that Carter was burly, he knew that this person's martial arts skills were definitely not low. Everyone exchanged pleasantries for a while before they set off again and walked back the way they came. After walking for a while, Zhang Qiuming suddenly turned his head and laughed at Fan Shouwu. "Fan Gongzi, listen. There's the sound of water in front." Fan Shouwu was delighted when he heard this. They had been hungry and thirsty the entire way. Although there was food, no one wanted to eat when they were thirsty. After everyone heard Zhang Qiuming's words, they immediately looked at Fan Shouwu. When Fan Shouwu saw this, he knew that everyone was thirsty. He quickly waved his hand and shouted, "Let's all go over and drink to our heart's content." With that, Fan Shouwu took the lead and ran toward the sound of water. Everyone was already unable to endure their thirst. When they saw Fan Shouwu run, they immediately took large strides and ran toward the water source. In order to drink the water as soon as possible, everyone quickened their pace. The sound of water flowing became louder and louder. Finally, after everyone ran 300 to 400 meters, a small stream appeared in front of them. Looking at the clear water flowing in the stream, everyone could not help but swallow their saliva. However, no one dared to go over. They all stared intently at the stream. Everyone's old rival, the great earth bear, was currently lying on a large rock by the stream, sleeping soundly. Fan Shouwu was speechless as he listened to the flowing stream and looked at the great earth bear that was sleeping soundly. Since the heavens gave us a stream, why did they have to sacrifice an great earth bear? With this fellow by the stream, how are we going to drink water? The ferocity of the great earth bear was still vivid in everyone's mind the first few nights. If not for Zhang Meng chasing it away with a large piece of wood, everyone would have been wiped out. What should we do now? After seeing the great earth bear, everyone was so frightened that they did not dare to make a sound. They only silently looked at Fan Shouwu. When Fan Shouwu saw that everyone was looking at him, he smiled bitterly and sighed. Then, he lowered his voice and said, "Let's quietly go downstream and hide from this great earth bear." When everyone heard this, they all nodded. Under such circumstances, this was the best choice. Now that the great earth bear was sleeping, if it was awakened, everyone would be finished. Chapter 89. After Fan Shouwu gave the order, everyone began to slowly turn around, wanting to take a detour downstream. Seeing this, Zhang Meng immediately walked forward, patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Fan Gongzi, there's no need to take a detour, that's too troublesome. Let's go straight for a drink." Fan Shouwu was stunned when he heard this, then pointed at the sleeping earth black bear in the distance, and said softly, "No, if we wake it up, then it's all over." Zhang Meng heard this, smiled and waved his hand. "Don't be afraid, let's go." As he spoke, Zhang Meng had already taken large strides towards the stream. Zhang Meng didn't try to hide his footsteps. He just walked towards the stream with a rustling sound. Zhang Meng's footsteps were very loud, and the earth black bear that was sleeping with its face facing the forest immediately heard his footsteps. It suddenly opened a pair of huge eyes, and looked towards Zhang Meng's direction. Everyone saw the earth black bear open its eyes, and their hearts were instantly shocked. Their hearts were also raised, and they poured all the strength in their bodies into their legs. As long as the earth black bear stood up, they would definitely run away immediately. No one considered such an action when fighting with the earth black bear. Doing so would only make them a little more beaten up by the earth black bear, and it would have no meaning. Everyone's gaze was on the earth black bear, but the earth black bear's gaze was fixed on Zhang Meng. The earth black bear didn't stand up, and just laid there, watching Zhang Meng walk step by step towards the stream. When Zhang Meng squatted by the stream to drink, the earth black bear that originally had its eyes wide open actually closed them again. Not only that, it also conveniently turned over, and its back faced everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone was so shocked that their mouths were wide open. They guessed in their hearts, could it be that this earth black bear had eaten its fill today? Or did it have a bad appetite today, and changed to a vegetarian diet? Zhang Meng drank 2 mouthfuls of water before standing up. He waved to the people in the forest and shouted, "Everyone must be thirsty. Come and drink some water." After everyone heard Zhang Meng's shout, no one dared to go over. Who knew if this was a trap set by the earth black bear? What if the great earth black bear wanted to trick everyone and wait for them to drink some water? Then it would immediately attack. Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Zhang Qiuming said, "Fan Gongzi, should we go over?" Fan Shouwu did not reply to Zhang Qiuming. His gaze was still fixed on the great earth black bear. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in Fan Shouwu's line of sight. He hurriedly looked over and saw that it was Zhang Meng leading Carter. They were walking out from the crowd and towards the stream. Seeing this scene, Fan Shouwu became even more nervous. He turned his gaze back to the earth black bear, wanting to see its reaction. But unfortunately, the earth black bear seemed to have really fallen asleep. It did not have any reaction to what was happening in the outside world. Seeing that Carter had already walked to Zhang Meng's side, he immediately lay down on the bank and started drinking water. At this moment, the earth black bear still did not move. Seeing this, Zhang Qiuming suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Fan Gongzi, why don't we go over too? Even if we don't go over, if the earth black bear wants to attack us, it won't be easy for us to escape." After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Qiuming's words, he thought for a while before making up his mind. He waved his hand to the people behind him. "Let's go and drink some water." When everyone heard this, they were both surprised and delighted. They were delighted that there was finally water to drink. But, to drink water within the earth black bear's attack range was simply too exciting. Fan Shouwu led everyone towards the stream. As he walked, his gaze was always on the earth black bear, not daring to be the slightest bit negligent. Although he clearly knew that if the earth black bear wanted to attack them, it would be useless even if he kept staring at the earth black bear. The earth black bear's body was humongous. Not only was its attack power incomparably strong, even its speed was not something they could compare to. It could be said that if the earth black bear attacked now, everyone would definitely end up being wiped out. But, since things had already come to this step, there was no point in thinking too much. Fan Shouwu walked to the stream. He made up his mind and did not look at the earth black bear anymore. He directly lay down by the stream and drank his fill first. Everyone lay down by the stream and drank for quite a while. Only then did they completely quench their thirst. At this moment, the earth black bear was still sleeping soundly. After Fan Shouwu finished drinking, seeing that the earth black bear did not move, he was slightly relieved. After everyone finished drinking, he immediately stood up and wanted everyone to leave. When Zhang Meng saw Fan Shouwu standing up, he hurriedly laughed. "After walking for so many days and rolling in the dust so many times, don't tell me you don't want to wash up." "Wash up?" Fan Shouwu looked at Zhang Meng in disbelief. He only wanted to ask one question. "Brother Meng, is it really good to do such things beside the earth black bear?" When Zhang Meng saw that Fan Shouwu did not speak, he ignored him. When he saw that everyone had finished drinking, he immediately jumped into the stream and started to toss around. These 2 days it was indeed too dirty. Near the Red Mountain peak it was all dust. In order to avoid the Nightmare Eagle's detection, everyone had to hide in the dust. One could imagine how dirty it was. When Carter saw that Zhang Meng had jumped down, he did not even hesitate and also jumped down. Seeing the two of them tossing around in the stream, Fan Shouwu was speechless. He turned to look at the guards behind him, and then looked at Zhang Qiuming beside him. Following which, he sighed. "All of you go, it's already like this anyway." When everyone heard this, they all turned to look at the earth black bear, and then looked at Zhang Meng and Carter in the stream. Only then did they carefully walk into the stream. Half an hour later, the originally clear stream water had been made extremely dirty by everyone. Only then did everyone feel refreshed and set off on their journey. As they walked, Fan Shouwu, who turned back to look, suddenly narrowed his eyes. His hand also tightly grasped the hilt of his sword. The earth black bear had already stood up and was looking over. Seeing this scene, Fan Shouwu was so nervous that he could not speak. He only stretched out his hand to push Zhang Qiuming beside him and pointed behind him. But when Fan Shouwu turned his head, he shockingly realized that the earth black bear had already shakily walked in the opposite direction from him. Seeing the earth black bear walking away, Fan Shouwu and Zhang Qiuming exchanged glances. Then, at the same time, they turned their gazes towards Zhang Meng, who was walking in front. An inconceivable thought appeared in their minds. Could it be that the reason why the earth black bear did not attack everyone was because of Zhang Meng? Ever since Zhang Meng had defeated it previously, could it be that it was scared? So scared that even if he did anything in front of it, it would not dare to make a sound? Could it really be like this? Chapter 90. When Fan Shouwu thought of this, he turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and saw that his eyes were also filled with disbelief. Looking at Zhang Meng walking in front of him, Fan Shouwu suddenly quickened his pace and walked to Zhang Meng's side, smiling as he spoke. "The fierce brothers, how do you know that the Earth Black Bear won't attack us?" When Zhang Meng heard this, he turned to look at Fan Shouwu. "What's so strange about that? It's afraid." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he was first startled, then asked with some hesitation, "Who is it afraid of? You?" When he heard Fan Shouwu's words, Zhang Meng nodded. "I think so." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he was truly stunned. Although he had already faintly guessed that this would be the result, when Zhang Meng personally admitted it, Ken still made him feel very surprised. The Earth Black Bear was not to be trifled with. Whether it was in the Magic Empire or the Anwu Empire, everyone acknowledged that the Earth Black Bear's strength was absolutely formidable. But now, Zhang Meng actually admitted that the fierce Earth Black Bear was afraid of him. Fan Shouwu was still somewhat in disbelief. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Fan Shouwu couldn't help but ask again, "The fierce brothers, is what you said true? You're not lying to me, right?" Zhang Meng smiled as he shook his head. He patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder. "What's there to not believe? Look at the nightmare eagle's feather on them. Didn't I also bring it back for you?" At this point, Fan Shouwu had no choice but to believe it. Looking at the smiling Zhang Meng, he thought in his heart, the Earth Black Bear that everyone feared was afraid of him. He could even obtain the nightmare eagle's feather. Who in the world was this guy? Could it be that the fort master of the Twin Oxen Mountain stronghold was really that powerful? When Zhang Meng saw Fan Shouwu looking at him in disbelief, he couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder again. "Fan Gongzi, I'm going to build an auction house in Mount Shuangniu this time. There might be some things that I really need your help with. I wonder if you'll agree?" When Fan Shouwu heard this, he hurriedly nodded. "No problem. If there's anything you need, just tell me. As long as it's within my ability, I'll definitely do it for you." Zhang Meng thought for a moment, then slowly said, "What I want to know the most right now is, of course, what everyone needs. I want to ask Fan Gongzi to help me find out what everyone in Anwu country likes, or rather, what they need the most." When he said this, Zhang Meng paused and thought for a moment before continuing, "Of course, if Fan Gongzi can contact some customers beforehand, that would naturally be even better." When Fan Shouwu heard this, he first glanced at Zhang Meng, then asked in confusion, "The fierce brothers, I know that you're very strong, but you have to know that there are many things that we can't do." When he said this, Fan Shouwu was afraid that Zhang Meng didn't understand what he meant, so he explained. "If you want to build an auction house, not only do you need to prepare many things, you also need to have strength. Of course, I don't deny that the fierce brothers are indeed very strong, but there are many things that can't be done by relying on one person's strength." When Zhang Meng heard this, he smiled and turned to look at Fan Shouwu. For example? When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Meng didn't seem to care at all, he helplessly shook his head. "Let's not talk about the problem of supply for now. Let's talk about Mount Shuangniu. If you have some treasure, and it's an extremely good treasure, if you want to start an auction house, you have to publicize it and let everyone know. Am I right?" When Zhang Meng heard this, he nodded. Fan Shouwu was right. If you had a treasure, you would definitely publicize it and let everyone know. How could you hide it from everyone? If that was the case, why would you open an auction house? When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Meng agreed with his view, he continued. "If the treasures in your auction house are just some ordinary goods, then everything is fine. However, if there really are some truly good treasures, then I believe that there will definitely be many experts who will either steal or rob it. In short, they will definitely get their hands on it. You have to know that there are many experts who, after reaching a certain level of cultivation, will stop advancing due to various reasons. However, some treasures just so happen to be able to increase their strength and break through their bottleneck. Think about it. Wouldn't these kinds of people use various methods to obtain these treasures? When Zhang Meng heard Fan Shouwu's words, he nodded somewhat unconcernedly. Fan Gongzi, what you said is indeed reasonable. I think that such a thing will also happen. When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Meng once again agreed with his view, he also nodded in satisfaction. The Fierce brothers, if that's the case, do you still want to open an auction house? Zhang Meng nodded. Of course I want to open it. Don't tell me that I won't open an auction house just because I'm afraid of them stealing and robbing? When Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Meng still had such thoughts, he couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. The Fierce brothers, I know that you are very strong, but there are truly many experts in this world. Their cultivation has reached a level that you don't dare to imagine. Against such people, to put it bluntly, even if you are strong, I'm afraid that it will be of no use. At this point, Fan Shouwu turned his head and glanced at the place where the great earth black bear had disappeared before continuing. Although you can scare the great earth black bear away, you have to know that in front of a true expert, the great earth black bear that is incomparably strong in our eyes is just like an ant in their eyes. They can exterminate it with a flick of their finger. Their strength is definitely not something that we can imagine. If your auction house has some rare treasures and these experts see them, I'm afraid that it will bring disaster to your mountain stronghold. When Zhang Meng heard this, he nodded. He understood what Fan Shouwu meant, and he also knew that Fan Shouwu was reminding him out of goodwill. If his auction house really did have treasures that could raise one's strength, then those who couldn't obtain these treasures would definitely think of ways to steal them or rob them. With the strength of the Twin Oxen Mountain, it really wasn't enough to deal with these experts. Those experts could probably destroy the Twin Oxen Mountain with a flick of their finger. However, although Zhang Meng was very grateful for Fan Shouwu's reminder, he still had to continue with the auction house plan. Zhang Meng didn't believe that with his strength, he would still be afraid of anyone. Therefore, no one could stop him from opening the auction house plan. The world's largest auction house plan was Zhang Meng's first plan, and he definitely couldn't let it fail halfway. When he thought of this, Zhang Meng somewhat gratefully patted Fan Shouwu's shoulder. I'm very grateful for Fan Gongzi's reminder, but I've already decided on this matter. I must open this auction house. Seeing that Zhang Meng was determined, Fan Shouwu sighed. The Fierce brothers, things aren't as simple as you think. Chapter 91. Fan Shouwu continued. Other than facing those experts with bad intentions, you still have to face many other problems. Many people who have obtained treasures will request the auction house to deliver them. Brother Meng, just the task of delivering the goods is already extremely difficult. Zhang Meng heard this and looked at Fan Shouwu, asking, Fan Gongzi, are you saying that during the delivery process, there will be people who will try to snatch the treasures? Fan Shouwu nodded. That's for sure. There are many people who want to obtain treasures but are unwilling to spend money. They want to intercept the treasures halfway and use them for themselves. After hearing Fan Shouwu's words, Zhang Meng laughed coldly. If there really is someone who dares to rob me, then they should think carefully. After persuading for a long time, Fan Shouwu saw that Zhang Meng was unmoved, so he could only sigh and say, actually, these human experts more or less still care about morality. However, if they want to obtain treasures, they will have to face many powerful magical beasts or immortal beasts. Their strength is probably even more powerful. Even human experts don't dare to face them lightly. It is also because of this that treasures are called treasures. Because no one can obtain them, they have to spend gold coins to buy them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Zhang Meng heard this and nodded. Fan Gongzi, I understand what you're saying, but I can tell you the truth. What you're saying is not a big deal to me. At this point, Zhang Meng turned to Fan Shouwu and said with a smile, the information I asked you to find out is a big deal to me. After Fan Shouwu heard Zhang Meng's words, he was somewhat stunned. He felt that after persuading him for so long, he actually didn't listen to a single word. Thinking of this, Fan Shouwu helplessly shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Since the fierce brothers have already thought of this, then I won't try to persuade you. I hope that you will be more careful in the future and don't get yourself into trouble." Along the way, the group didn't encounter any more powerful monsters. They just kept moving forward and soon arrived at the place where they met Zhang Meng. Fan Shouwu pointed to a mountain in front of them and said with a smile, "The fierce brothers, in front of us is the place where we met. Let's part here. 5 days later, let's meet at a restaurant in Green City. What do you think?" Zhang Meng nodded and said, "All right, let's meet at a restaurant in Cianwood City in 5 days." Fan Shouwu cupped his fists towards Zhang Meng. "Brother Meng, goodbye then." After saying this, Fan Shouwu waved his hand at the guards behind him and walked in another direction. Following the disappearing figures of Fan Shouwu and the others, Zhang Meng turned his head to look at the situation around him before walking back in the direction he came from. Although it was said that he was going back, it wasn't that smooth. Zhang Meng had come here because he was lost. If he were an ordinary person, it would be very difficult for him to return. However, Zhang Meng was not an ordinary person. He first found the big tree that he had knocked down and carefully recalled the direction he came from. Only then did he lead Carter in that direction. After walking for a short distance, Zhang Meng discovered a problem. Carter was walking too slowly. Although he was already panting from walking, in Zhang Meng's eyes, he still didn't have any speed. Zhang Meng thought for a moment, then grabbed Carter and jumped onto the treetop. He leapt in the direction he came from. Carter was carried in Zhang Meng's hands. Feeling this unparalleled speed, he was almost scared out of his wit. At this speed, once he crashed into something, he would definitely be smashed to pieces. Carter only felt that the scenery around him had become one, and he could no longer tell what was there. In his eyes, there was only a patch of white left around him, and because he was moving too fast, there were gusts of wind that were stirred up. The gusts of wind were so strong that Carter felt as if there were countless small knives stabbing him. In the beginning, he could still grit his teeth and bear with it. However, in the end, he could no longer bear it and started to wail. Hearing Carter's wails and seeing his miserable state, Zhang Meng immediately reacted and hurriedly slowed down. Only then did Carter feel much better. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. Zhang Meng got lost a few more times, but he quickly adjusted his direction. After an unknown period of time, Zhang Meng finally saw a familiar scenery. Looking at the two ox-like mountains in the distance, Zhang Meng was slightly relieved. He might not recognize the other places, but he knew those two mountains very well. The reason why Twin Oxes Mountain was called Twin Oxes Mountain was because from afar, it really looked like two oxes with their heads and tails connected, forming a valley. Since he had found his stronghold, Zhang Meng was no longer in a hurry. He slowly slowed down and put down Carter. Carter's feet stepped on the ground. Just as he was about to speak, he felt the world spin. He staggered 2 steps and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Zhang Meng helped him stabilize his body. The speed just now was too fast. It was even more thrilling than a roller coaster. After sitting on the roller coaster for so long, Carter's physique was already good enough that he did not throw up. The terrain of Twin Oxes Mountain was very good. The peaks on both sides were like 2 oxes guarding the 2 sides. The tails of the 2 oxes were connected, forming a valley. The 2 oxes' heads were facing each other, forming a passageway. Back in the day, Zhang Meng's father, Zhang Hongtai, had gotten someone to build a door between the 2 oxes, forming a stronghold. Overall, Twin Oxes Mountain was a place that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. If the enemy wanted to attack, they could only attack through the front door. The other 3 sides were steep cliff. It was impossible to attack from these 3 sides. Although this place was considered a desolate place and basically no one came here, there were 4 young men taking turns guarding the entrance of the stronghold every day to prevent outsiders from entering. Zhang Meng had just walked to the entrance of the stronghold when the door was opened. Before he could see anyone, a voice came from inside. "Brother Meng, you're finally back. Everyone is worried sick." As soon as the voice fell, the door of the stronghold was opened. Chen Tao walked out quickly with a face full of joy. "Brother Meng, where have you been these few days? Why didn't you come back and tell us?" Zhang Meng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "It's okay. I'm an adult. Are you worried that I'll get lost?" After Chen Tao and Zhang Meng finished talking, Chen Tao suddenly saw Carter behind Zhang Meng. He was shocked. "Brother Meng, who is he? Why does he look like someone from the Magic Empire?" Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. "You have good taste. His name is Carter. He is indeed from the Magic Empire. From now on, he will also be a member of our stronghold." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Chen Tao was a little confused. After a while, he asked hesitantly, "Brother Meng, are you saying that he will also join our stronghold?" Chapter 92. After hearing Chen Tao's words, Zhang Meng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. From now on, Carter is our brother." Hearing this, Chen Tao didn't stand on ceremony. He stepped forward and shook hands with Carter before introducing himself. "My name is Chen Tao. My father is the second chief here. If you need anything, feel free to tell me." Hearing this, Carter quickly nodded. "My name is Carter." After the 3 of them exchanged pleasantries, Zhang Meng said to Chen Tao, "Go back immediately and tell the other chiefs to wait for me in the hall. Tell them that I have something to announce." Hearing this, Chen Tao quickly nodded. Then, he turned and ran back into the village. Seeing that Chen Tao had left, Zhang Meng also led Carter to the hall of the village. By the time Zhang Meng arrived at the main hall, the 4 fort masters were already waiting there. Seeing Zhang Meng enter the hall, the 4 chiefs didn't dare to slight him. Although they were all Zhang Meng's uncles, Zhang Meng was the chief after all. He was the leader of this village. They still had to abide by the rules of etiquette. As soon as Zhang Meng entered the hall, he saw the 4 chiefs coming to greet him. He hurriedly waved his hand. "Uncles, let's sit down and talk." Chen Zhongxiong was about to speak when he saw Carter behind Zhang Meng. He was shocked. With just one look at Carter's attire and appearance, it was obvious that he wasn't from the Anwu Empire. Chen Zhongxiong wasn't that young man Chen Tao. He was the second chief of the village. Now that an outsider had entered the village, how could he not pay attention? Although there wasn't anything valuable in the village, it was still the place where everyone lived. If something happened, it wasn't something they wanted to see. Looking at Carter, Chen Zhongxiong asked curiously, "Chief, who is this person? Why is he here?" After hearing Chen Zhongxiong's words, Zhang Meng remembered that he hadn't introduced Carter to them. "Uncle Chen, this is my attendant Carter. He will be part of the village from now on." Hearing this, Chen Zhongxiong was stunned. Chen Tao couldn't see through Carter's depth, but Chen Zhongxiong could see it clearly. The aura that Carter exuded as he walked was definitely not that of an ordinary person. In his opinion, Carter was definitely an expert, and perhaps an expert that was not weaker than him. How could such a person become Zhang Meng's follower? Chen Zhongxiong had watched Zhang Meng grow up. Chen Zhongxiong was very clear about his capabilities. It was really strange that someone like Carter could become Zhang Meng's follower. It's just that, although it's strange. It was strange, but Zhang Meng was the chief of the bandit group after all. There were some things that could not be said face to face. Chen Zhongxiong decided that after today's meeting was over, he had to get to the bottom of it. The fort masters exchanged some pleasantries before returning to their respective seat. Seeing that everyone was seated, Zhang Meng also quickly walked to the seat in the middle and sat down. After sitting down, Zhang Meng raised his head to look at the 5 fort masters and said with a smile, "I came back this time because I have something important to discuss with you all." At this point, Zhang Meng looked around at everyone present and stopped talking. Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't speak, Second Fort Master Chen Zhongxiong suddenly stood up and asked with some confusion, "Chief, what do you want to discuss?" Zhang Meng said, "During this period of time, I also looked at the terrain of the village and found that the terrain here is too high. There is no water source, so it's not suitable for planting crops. So, I think we should do something else to maintain everyone's livelihood." As soon as Zhang Meng finished speaking, 5th Fort Master Feng Yongfu suddenly stood up and said loudly, "Chief, there are so many of us. If we don't plant crops, what can we do?" 4th Fort Master Bai Tianxing also stood up and sighed. "That's right. At first, I thought this was a good place. It's surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and only one side has an exit. This kind of terrain is easy to defend and hard to attack. Even if bandits came to attack us, they wouldn't be able to break in. But who would have thought that the terrain here is so bad? Not only is the crop yield low, but it's also always dry." Sigh. In the end, Bai Tianxing let out a long sigh and ended his speech. 3rd Fort Master He Wenliang's eyes suddenly lit up. He slammed the table and stood up abruptly. "Chief, are you going to bring us to do something?" Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. "Of course not. Why would I bring you all to do something like that?" Chen Zhongxiong looked at Zhang Meng with some confusion. "Chief, if we're not going to do something, then what do you want us to do?" Zhang Meng turned to look at Chen Zhongxiong and said with a smile, "I've been thinking about it for a while now. While I was away, I've already made up my mind. I'm going to build a large-scale auction house on Mount Shuangniu to maintain everyone's livelihood." After Chen Zhongxiong heard Zhang Meng's words, he was a little stunned. Although he had not seen much of the world, he had heard of places like auction houses. After being stunned for a while, Chen Zhongxiong asked with some confusion, "Chief, are you sick?" 5th Fort Master Feng Yongfu acted as if he did not hear what Zhang Meng said just now. He only let out a long sigh. "Chief, there's not much food left in the fort. I think we won't be able to hold on for much longer." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Chen Zhongxiong also nodded. "That's right. Chief, what we should be thinking about now is to solve the current problem. It's only early spring now. If we want to wait for the food to be harvested, we'll have to wait for half a year before we can harvest the food in the field. How are we going to survive this half a year? Are we going to let everyone starve for half a year?" When Zhang Meng heard that, he did not say anything. He directly took out the gold coins and bills that he had obtained and handed them to Carter, who was standing beside him, indicating for him to take them over. Carter quickly took the gold coins and bills and quickly walked in front of Chen Zhongxiong to pass them to him. Chen Zhongxiong took the things that Carter handed over. When he took a closer look, he was immediately shocked. At this moment, the other fort masters also came forward to check the things in Chen Zhongxiong's hands. When he saw them clearly, Feng Yongfu could not help but reach out to take the gold coins. However, Chen Zhongxiong raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng. He asked with some confusion, "Chief, where did you get these gold coins?" When Zhang Meng heard that, he said disapprovingly, "I earned them." "Earned them?" When Chen Zhongxiong heard that, he did not believe it. If it was so easy to earn gold coins, they would not have to starve. Moreover, Zhang Meng was a child. It was really strange that he could earn so many gold coins in just 5 or 6 days. Seeing that Chen Zhongxiong was going to ask more questions, Zhang Meng quickly waved his hand, indicating for him to stop asking. "Uncle Chen, don't ask about this. I'll explain it to you later. Now, I have something more important to discuss with you." Something more important? Looking at the gold coins in his hand, Chen Zhongxiong was puzzled. Could there be more gold coins? Chapter 93. After listening to Zhang Meng's words, everyone's eyes turned from the gold coins to Zhang Meng. Zhang Meng saw that everyone was looking at him, so he said with a smile, "With these gold coins, I think we can buy some food to last for a while. During this time, we can start to build the village and turn it into the largest auction house. At that time, everyone will naturally not have to worry about food and clothing. We also don't have to worry about the lack of water and the lack of production in the fields." Since the conversation had reached this point, Chen Zhongxiong coughed softly and then asked, "Head Chieftain, are you serious?" Zhang Meng heard this and nodded. Seeing Zhang Meng nod, Chen Zhongxiong asked, "Head Chieftain, do you know what an auction house is for?" Zhang Meng nodded again. Chen Zhongxiong continued, "Let's not talk about how difficult it is to build an auction house and how much money is needed. Let's talk about what we should auction after the auction house is built." Zhang Meng said, "Naturally, we should auction some treasures and the like?" Chen Zhongxiong said, "But we don't have any treasures or the like to auction." Zhang Meng smiled and shook his head. "Uncle Chen, you don't have to worry about these things. I naturally have a way." Chen Zhongxiong heard this and hurriedly said again, "Head Chieftain, those treasures are not something that people like us can obtain. Even if you have the opportunity to obtain a treasure, can you rely on a treasure alone to support an auction house?" After listening to Chen Zhongxiong's words, Bai Tianxing also advised, "Head Chieftain, it's really not that easy to open an auction house. First of all, our location is remote and not many people know about it. If there are no good treasures, who will come here to auction things? Also, for example, even if we have a good treasure, what if someone wants it?" When Zhang Meng saw that Bai Tianxing wanted to continue, he quickly waved his hand and said, "Fourth uncle, don't worry. I've already thought of these things. Whether it's the problem of supply or the problem of sales, I've already thought of a solution. As for the problem of safety, you don't have to worry. When the time comes, I'll hire a lot of experts to protect this place. You can rest assured about this." Hearing this, Chen Zhongxiong hurriedly said, "Chief, things are really not as simple as you think. Let's just talk about safety. With our status, what kind of experts can we invite? Can these experts really protect our safety?" Zhang Meng saw that these people were determined not to open an auction house, and in his heart, he knew what they were thinking. If he hadn't transmigrated, what they said was true. However, with her around, these problems were no longer a problem. However, how could he convince them that he had the ability to do so? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng looked around, then looked at Chen Zhongxiong and asked with a smile, "Second uncle, I know that you're doing this for the good of the village, but it's different now. The village can't grow any crops, and not only that, the crops that we grow aren't enough for everyone to eat. Therefore, we have to change this situation." At this point, Zhang Meng paused for a moment before continuing. "The auction house must be opened. I've thought about it for a long time, and this is the most suitable industry for us. The terrain of Twin Ox Mountain is strategic, and this is the biggest advantage. As long as we build an auction house in the valley, even if someone wants to steal or attack, they might not be able to break in. Therefore, we just have to do our best to find a good source of supply and the problem of sales." Hearing this, Chen Zhongxiong hurriedly said, "However, even if the terrain of Twin Ox Mountain is strategic, if there really are experts who come to steal the treasure, I'm afraid that the terrain alone won't be able to stop them." Zhang Meng nodded. "Of course, relying on the terrain alone won't work. Therefore, we have to have the strength to protect the village." At this point, Zhang Meng stood up and walked slowly to Chen Zhongxiong with a smile. "Second uncle, what kind of strength do you think we have to protect the village?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Chen Zhongxiong didn't understand what he meant and asked curiously, "Head Chieftain, what do you mean?" Seeing that Chen Zhongxiong didn't understand, Zhang Meng raised his hand with a smile and waved it in front of Chen Zhongxiong's face. "Second uncle, I'll show you my strength now. As Zhang Meng spoke, he clenched his fist and lightly smashed it on the ground. Just as Zhang Meng's fist was about to hit the ground, a hurricane swept up in the hall. The tables and chairs in the hall were blown into the air by this hurricane and crashed into the wall, breaking into pieces and scattering everywhere. Although Chen Zhongxiong and the others' martial arts weren't bad, after being swept up by this hurricane, they couldn't help but take 4 or 5 steps back before they could stabilize themselves. When Zhang Meng's fist smashed on the ground, everyone felt the ground shake. After a while, under everyone's stunned gazes, the place where Zhang Meng's fist landed had already become a deep pit. In the blink of an eye, everyone heard a splash of water and a stream of water sprayed out from the deep pit into the hall. Looking at this fountain, Zhang Meng frowned and hurriedly stomped his feet. The exit of the big pit was immediately covered by mud, and the fountain disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, everyone felt as if they were in a dream. They looked at the remaining traces of the big pit in the hall with some disbelief. In the dilapidated hall, there was no sound at all at this moment. Everyone was staring blankly at the big pit. Although Carter had long known that Zhang Meng's strength was tyrannical, he didn't expect it to be tyrannical to this extent. If he could create a big pit with one punch, he could do it if he had enough strength. However, the big pit that Zhang Meng created was absolutely different. It was impossible to create this kind of damage by relying on strength alone. When the water sprayed out from the pit just now, Carter clearly saw that the big pit that Zhang Meng created was only 1 step wide. Not only that, it was actually so deep. This meant that the pit went all the way to the ground, and the surroundings of the pit were not affected by the tyrannical power of the pit. How much control did one need to have in order to make this pit look like this? Not only had Carter never seen such a person, he had never even heard of such a person. Chen Zhongxiong and the others were even more shocked. Zhang Meng had been practicing martial arts with his father since he was a child. Naturally, everyone was very clear about what kind of martial arts he had learned. Although they all admired Big Brother Zhang Meng's martial arts, it was only admiration. Only now did they realize that Big Brother, who could teach Zhang Meng such martial arts, was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. At this moment, everyone's admiration for Zhang Hongtai had turned into admiration. Seeing that everyone was silent, Zhang Meng slowly walked in front of Chen Zhongxiong and said with a smile, "Second uncle, what do you think of my strength?" Chapter 94. After Zhang Meng's punch caused a fountain to erupt in the hall, he went to Chen Zhongxiong and asked, "Second uncle, how is my strength?" When Chen Zhongxiong heard Zhang Meng's question, he finally reacted. He wiped the water off his forehead and turned his dull eyes to Zhang Meng. He asked in surprise, Head chieftain, who taught you martial arts?" Zhang Meng smiled and said, "Of course it was my father. Have you ever seen me learn martial arts from anyone else?" Chen Zhongxiong shook his head and said, "No, I haven't." Zhang Meng said, "Second uncle, if I open an auction house here, do you think I can protect our village with my strength?" Chen Zhongxiong nodded blankly and then said with a bitter smile, "I was worried that we weren't strong enough and that opening an auction house would lead to a disaster. Now it seems that there shouldn't be a problem." He Wenyang suddenly came forward and asked doubtfully, "Head chieftain, I've also practiced martial arts with Big Brother. Although his martial arts are much better than mine, it's not as strong as yours." Zhang Meng smiled and nodded, saying, "Third uncle, you're right." At this point, Zhang Meng looked at He Wenliang and said seriously, "Third uncle, you have to know that everyone has different talent and cultivation speed. Take me for example. I'm definitely a 1 in a million martial arts expert. In such a short time, I've already mastered the martial arts that my family practiced. Not only that, I've also reached the peak. That's why I'm so strong." When He Wenliang heard this, he excitedly grabbed Zhang Meng and asked loudly, "Head chieftain, are you saying that you've only practiced the martial arts that your family has passed down in your family? It's because you're talented that you can cultivate to this level?" Zhang Meng nodded. He didn't understand why He Wenliang was so excited. When He Wenliang saw Zhang Meng nod, he asked again, "If a talented person practices the martial arts that my family has passed down in my family, can he also reach this level?" Zhang Meng was stunned. How would he know? However, he still nodded. "It should be possible. I don't know. I've never practiced third uncle's martial arts." At this time, Bai Tianxing and Feng Yongfu also came over and surrounded Zhang Meng. When Zhang Meng saw that everyone had gathered around, he said loudly, "Since no one has any objections, I've decided that from tomorrow onwards, we'll start preparing for the auction house." As soon as Zhang Meng's voice, Feng Yongfu said, "Head chieftain, even if you have the strength, you don't have enough gold coins. The gold coins that you took out, if used to buy food, can help everyone survive for a while, but if used to build the auction house, I'm afraid it won't be enough." When Zhang Meng heard this, he turned to look at Feng Yongfu and said with a smile, "Those gold coins will be used to buy food for everyone. As for the gold coins needed to build the auction house, I'll get it back for everyone within 5 days. In these few days, everyone should think about what kind of auction house to build." At this point, Zhang Meng looked around and continued, "I don't have any requirements. The auction house must be big and good. I want to build it to be the largest auction house in the world, so that everyone who wants to buy good things will come to my auction house to buy." After listening to Zhang Meng's words, the few chieftains were excited at first, but then they became a little embarrassed. After a while, Chen Zhongxiong said, "Head chieftain, if you want us to build a house, it's not a problem. I guarantee that the house will be strong and spacious. However, if you want to build an auction house, it doesn't seem to be possible." When Zhang Meng heard this, he realized that they were all the same. His chieftains were all country bumpkins. If they were to design the style of the auction house, they might not be able to design it well. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng nodded. "In that case, I'll draw a blueprint for you, and then you can find someone to build it. That should be fine, right?" Chen Zhongxiong heard this and quickly nodded. Then he asked with some doubt, "Head chieftain, can you design it well?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Don't worry, it's definitely not a problem." Seeing that no one had anything else to say, Zhang Meng waved his hand and said, "Since that's the case, let's go back and think about how to build our auction house." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, the chieftains turned around and walked out of the door as if they were in a dream. Looking at their backs, Zhang Meng suddenly shouted, "That's right, there's no need to fix this hall. It's going to be torn down anyway." The chieftains walked out of the hall. As the mountain breeze blew, their minds became clearer. Chen Zhongxiong turned around and looked at the hall behind him. Then he turned around and said to his brothers, "I hunted a rabbit yesterday. Tonight, let's go to my place for a drink." When the chieftains heard Chen Zhongxiong's words, they all nodded in tacit understanding. Today's events had stunned everyone. Before they could react, Zhang Meng had already chased them out. Until now, the 4 chieftains still felt like they were in a dream. When Zhang Meng saw that the chieftains had gone back, he also walked out of the hall and walked towards his house. Zhang Meng was not the chieftain because his father had passed away, so he passed the chieftain position to him. It was because his father had left home for so many years that he wanted to go back and take a look. Zhang Hongtai was also a straightforward person. When he thought of doing it, he would do it. Thus, he brought his wife home. When he left, he told everyone that Zhang Meng would be the chieftain from now on. Although passing the chieftain position to Zhang Meng was a bit of a joke, the brothers understood why he did it. First of all, Zhang Hongtai was only going back to his hometown to take a look. If the conditions there were good, he would naturally let everyone go back. If the conditions were not good, Zhang Hongtai would still return to the village. At that time, the chieftain position would still be Zhang Hongtai's. After all, Zhang Hongtai was not very old. If he was the chieftain, he could at least be the chieftain for 20 to 30 years. If the chieftain position was passed to someone else, what if Zhang Hongtai came back? Wouldn't there be no position? It was also because of these reasons that Zhang Meng became the chieftain of Twin Ox Mountain. Zhang Meng was the only one in his house. Of course, as the young master and chieftain, he would definitely have a servant to serve him. That servant was Wang Chong. Wang Chong was an orphan. He was 16 years old this year. When his mother brought him to the mountain pass of Twin Ox Mountain, she died of illness and he was taken away by Zhang Hongtai. Zhang Hongtai was Wang Chong's savior and had raised him since he was young. Wang Chong was naturally loyal to Zhang Hongtai and took good care of Zhang Meng. As the chief of the mountain stronghold, the place he lived in was naturally not bad. He had a small courtyard and a spacious house. The furniture in the house was also much better than other houses. It could be said that this was the best place on Mount Shuangniu. Chapter 95. Wang Chong was sweeping the dust in the courtyard. When he looked up, he happened to see Zhang Meng walking into the courtyard. He hurriedly threw down the broom and greeted him. "Brother Meng, you're back. Have you eaten?" Zhang Meng waved his hand and said with a smile, "Xiao Chong, you don't have to worry about me. You do your thing." As he spoke, Zhang Meng had already walked towards his room. As soon as he returned to his room, Zhang Meng began to rummage through his room. He wanted to find something like a pen and paper. To build an auction house, he still needed to design a blueprint. To be honest, Zhang Meng also wanted to understand why he did not build his own auction house in the style he liked. However, Zhang Meng searched for a long time and did not find a pen or paper. Looking at the room that had been searched, Zhang Meng had no choice but to poke his head out of the courtyard and shout at Wang Chong. "Xiao Chong, where are my ink paper and inkstone?" After hearing Zhang Meng's shout, Wang Chong could not help but frown and replied loudly, "Young master, didn't you throw away the ink paper and inkstone?" "I threw it away." Zhang Meng heard this and could not help but scratch his head and continue awkwardly. "Is that so? Then find me some more." Wang Chong heard this and immediately put down the broom in his hand and said with a smile, "Young master, you don't have ink paper and inkstone here. Why don't I go to the master's place and get you some?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Go quickly, I need it urgently." In the evening, several fort masters were invited to Chen Zhongxiong's house. Several fort masters sat at the table and saw the 2 plates of pickled wild vegetables on the table. They were a little stunned. Where was the rabbit meat that was promised? Chen Zhongxiong saw that everyone's gaze was a little strange and could not help but smile awkwardly. "I went to the mountain and walked around, but I did not see the shadow of the rabbit. So, I can only treat everyone to a bite tonight." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiong took out a wine jar from under the table and placed it on the table. He said with a smile, "Although there are no dishes, I have wine." "Wine? Second brother, where did you get the wine?" Looking at the wine jug on the table, He Wenliang could not help but gulp. Among the few bandit chiefs, He Wenliang was the only one who was an alcoholic. Chen Zhongxiong said with a smile as he slapped the mud seal away. "Third brother, you don't have to worry about where the wine came from. Today, just drink." With wine, the atmosphere naturally became more lively. After everyone had downed a bowl of wine, the topic shifted to the main purpose of today's gathering. Bai Tianxing looked at Chen Zhongxiong at the wine table and asked doubtfully, "Second brother, why do I feel like the chief has changed into a different person?" He Wenliang swallowed the wine in his mouth and nodded. "Yes, it's just a little different. In the past, when this kid saw us, he didn't speak well, but now it's really a little different." Chen Zhongxiong looked at his brothers and said strangely, "Yeah, especially the strength he displayed today. It's simply too shocking. Speaking of Zhang Meng's strength, Feng Yongfu, who had always been cautious, said, "Our crops have always been poor because of the high terrain and the lack of water. But today, little Mingzi made a fountain in the hall. Think about it, how deep did he have to go to make water come out?" Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. He Wenliang pinched his chin and asked with some doubt, "Today, when I asked little Mingzi about his martial arts practice, his answer also made me feel very strange. He said that he practiced his family's martial arts, but I'm afraid that all of us have fought with Big Brother before. Do you think that Big Brother's martial arts are so strong?" After hearing He Wenliang's words, everyone shook their heads. Bai Tianxing said, "Although Big Brother's martial arts are a little stronger than ours, it's not to this extent. Second brother, you've been with Big Brother the longest. You should be the clearest about Big Brother's strength. Do you think his martial arts are so strong?" After hearing Bai Tianxing's words, Chen Zhongxiong shook his head. "No, Big Brother's martial arts can't be so strong. Not to mention making a big hole in the ground, even making a small hole would be very difficult." Feng Yongfu stroked his beard and said thoughtfully, "Head chieftain said that the martial arts he practiced were passed down in his family. The reason why he is so strong is because he has a high talent for martial arts. That's why he can practice so strong." Speaking of this, Feng Yongfu glanced at everyone. Head chieftain said that he could practice his family's martial arts to this extent. Do you believe it? After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, the few chieftains looked at each other and then shook their heads. Seeing that everyone was shaking their heads, Wang Yongfu continued, "I don't think so too. I think that the reason why head chieftain's martial arts are so strong must be related to the time he was away." When He Wenliang heard this, he couldn't help but ask, "You're saying that little Mingzi had a fortuitous encounter during this period of time?" Feng Yongfu nodded. "That's the only explanation that can explain why his martial arts are so strong." Bai Tianxing also nodded. "That's true. Before little Mingzi left, his martial arts didn't seem to be so strong. Could it be like what fifth brother said, that he had a fortuitous encounter?" After listening to everyone's discussion, Chen Zhongxiong was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "That's the only explanation that can explain why his martial arts have become so strong." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiong gently tapped the table with his finger before he continued. "The main reason I've gathered everyone here is to talk about the auction house. What do you all think?" As soon as Chen Zhongxiong's voice fell, Feng Yongfu had already said, "No matter what you want to do, in short, the gold coins that little Mingzi brought back must not be touched. I've already thought about it. I'll go down the mountain tomorrow and exchange all these gold coins for food to transport back. This will save everyone from starvation." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, everyone laughed. He Wenliang said, "Fifth brother, you're afraid of starvation. Didn't little Mingzi say today that he will think of a way to pay for the expenses of building the auction house? He won't touch those gold coins." Feng Yongfu heard this and said, "No matter what, these gold coins must not be touched. They can only be exchanged for food." Chen Zhongxiong saw that everyone was digressing from the topic again, so he quickly tapped the table again. "The problem of food, we'll go by it tomorrow. What I want to talk about now is the auction house." Speaking of this, Chen Zhongxiong continued, "Although none of us have seen an auction house, we've all heard of it. I think that if we want to build a large auction house, whether it's in terms of various expenses, goods, sales, or safety, I just want to ask you now. Do you think that with head chieftain's strength, there will be a problem to open this auction house?" Chapter 96. After listening to Chen Zhongxiong's words, everyone fell into silence. After a long while, He Wenliang slowly said, "I don't know if you guys noticed, but little Mingzi made a big hole in the hall." Chen Zhongxiong nodded. "I saw it." He Wen-yang said, "Second brother, what do you think of that hole?" Chen Zhongxiong narrowed his eyes, as if he was recalling the big hole in the hall. After a long while, he slowly said, "That hole is straight up and down, without damaging the surrounding soil, and to be able to make such a deep hole, needless to say, I have never seen or even heard of such skill." He Wen-yang nodded. "Indeed, there are many people who can make a big hole, but to be able to make a hole like that, I think, there are not many." When they were in the hall, Feng Yongfu had been looking at his gold coins, so he really did not notice the shape of the hole. At this moment, when he heard Chen Zhongxiong and He Wen-yang talking about it, he asked with some doubts, "What's the difference between the hole made by little Mingzi and the hole made by others?" Chen Zhongxiong heard and nodded. To be able to make a big hole, one's fist must be incomparably fierce, and the power of this punch is very terrifying. But little Mingzi's punch is not only strong, even the control of the punch has reached the point where he can control it as he pleases. He Wen-yang continued, "To be able to make a big hole and a straight-up hole are two different concepts. The difference between the two is simply the difference between heaven and earth." Feng Yongfu heard and was suddenly shocked. "Doesn't this mean that little Mingzi's martial arts is quite powerful?" Chen Zhongxiong nodded. "Indeed, with the power of his punch, I think, very few people would be able to take it." When everyone heard this, they secretly nodded. To be able to make such a big hole, if I were to transfer this power to anyone, I'm afraid, really, not many people would be able to take this punch. Bai Tianxing picked up the wine bowl and gently drank a mouthful. After swallowing the wine, he slowly said, "Little Mingzi's martial arts, is it really the family martial arts of Big Brother?" Chen Zhongxiong glanced at Bai Tianxing. "Fourth brother, what are you worried about?" Bai Tianxing smiled. "Second brother, you know what I'm worried about." After hearing Bai Tianxing's words, Chen Zhongxiong reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "Fourth brother, don't worry. We watched Xiao Meng grow up. He won't do anything bad. Fourth brother, do you still think that little Meng will come to deal with us?" At this point, Chen Zhongxiong turned to look at the crowd before continuing. "As you can see, little Meng wants to build an auction house in Mount Xuanyu. Do you understand what he means?" Everyone shook their heads when they heard this. When Chen Zhongxiong saw that everyone was shaking their heads, he could not help but sigh. He lifted the wine bowl in front of him and drained it in one gulp. "I think the reason why little Meng wants to build an auction house in Twin Ox Mountain is because he doesn't want us to go around plundering." When everyone heard this, they were all stunned. He Wen-yang was the first to ask, "Second brother, what do you mean?" Chen Zhongxiong said, "Actually, when Big Brother built this mountain stronghold, he didn't really want to be a bandit and rely on plundering to make a living. Instead, he wanted everyone to farm the land and harvest some food to sustain their lives. Now, it can't be maintained anymore. Do you still remember? A few days ago, we were still discussing going out to do something. Today, little Meng wants us to build an auction house in the mountain stronghold." At this point, Chen Zhongxiong sighed. "Little Meng doesn't want us old bones to do that kind of thing." When everyone heard this, they nodded. If Zhang Meng had not stopped them that day, they might have really set off. Seeing that everyone understood what he meant, Chen Zhongxiong lifted the wine bowl in front of him and looked at his brothers. "Brothers, we appreciate little Meng's good intentions. So, I think, first, we shouldn't ask about little Meng's martial arts. Second, I hope that everyone will fully support little Meng in what he wants to do." When He Wen-yang heard this, he hurriedly lifted the wine bowl in front of him and said, "Second brother, you worry too much. Little Meng is not leading us to do bad things. Why shouldn't we support him?" Bai Tianxing also said, "Yes, Brother Rang, we watched little Meng grow up. Although this child is not very smart, he is definitely not a bad child. What he wants to do is for the good of the mountain stronghold. Naturally, we will fully support him." When Feng Yongfu saw that everyone had expressed their stance, he hurriedly said, "Brothers, I have nothing to say. Since you all support Little Mingzi, I naturally won't fall behind. However, I have to say that the gold coins that Little Mingzi took out must all be exchanged for food in Cyanwood City tomorrow. Let's first maintain everyone's food and clothing. As for other things, I fully support you. After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Chen Zhongxiong could not help but laugh. Fifth brother, you are really a miser. I also think that no matter how many gold coins are in your hands, I am afraid that they will never come out again. Haha, Feng Yongfu heard Chen Zhongxiong's ridicule and did not take it seriously. He still laughed and said, no matter what, there are so many people in the mountain stronghold. They are all our fellow villagers. Since they trust us, we must not let them starve. Even if you call me a miser, I don't care. As long as everyone is full, you can say whatever you want. I don't care. Everyone burst into laughter when they heard this. After everyone laughed, Chen Zhongxiong raised his wine bowl in front of Feng Yongfu and said with some emotion, Fifth brother, thank you for being so careful all these years. Otherwise, I am afraid that the mountain stronghold would have starved long ago. Hearing this, He Wenliang also raised his wine bowl and came over. Fifth brother, I also toast you with this bowl of wine. I hope that a miser like you will have more money in your hand. That way, we will not have to worry about starvation anymore. Bai Tianxing was the closest to Feng Yongfu. He patted Feng Yongfu's shoulder and said with a smile, no matter what, you are the most attentive among us. Naturally, you will have to take care of these things. Seeing that his brothers were so polite, Feng Yongfu also hurriedly raised his wine bowl and said with a smile, thank you brothers for your trust. I also hope that the more gold coins I have in my hands, the better life of everyone in the mountain stronghold will be. Speaking of this, Feng Yongfu sighed. There were a total of 521 villagers who came out with us. Up until now, there are only 306 people left. I only hope that the number of these villagers will not decrease. Otherwise, we will be letting down their trust. Hearing this, everyone's heart sank. More than 500 people came out together. Now there were only 300 left. Chapter 97. The next morning, after Zhang Meng had his breakfast, he climbed to the top of the mountain and began to observe the terrain of the valley. After carefully observing for a long time, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction. The valley was very large, otherwise, the crops they planted wouldn't be enough for so many people to eat. The terrain was very flat, and it wouldn't be a problem to build any buildings in the valley. On the other hand, the safety of the valley was also very good. Zhang Meng walked around the mountain peaks on both sides, and was also very satisfied. There were cliffs on both sides, and there were only two places that were connected together. The terrain was slightly flat, and if there were outsiders, they could enter the valley from here. Seeing this flat terrain, Zhang Meng frowned, and then decided to repair this place, and turn it into a cliff. That way, the entire valley would truly become a valley that was easy to defend, but difficult to attack. Zhang Meng walked to the side of the valley, and saw that it was a flat slope, and looked at it for a long time. Finally, he punched out, and turned the flat terrain of the mountain directly into a cliff. Seeing that no one could enter the mountain peak from here, Zhang Meng nodded his head in satisfaction, and returned to the valley. Zhang Meng had just returned to the valley when he heard a hubbub of voices. A large group of people were gathered at the exit of the valley. They were talking non-stop. Because there were too many people talking, no one could hear what they were saying clearly. They could only hear a buzzing sound in their ears. In the valley, the only 3 carriages were already prepared, and were waiting in front of the mountain gate. Seeing all this, Zhang Meng knew that they were going to go out to purchase food. Zhang Meng thought for a while, and decided to go with them to Greenwood City to take a look. After all, he had been here for so long, and hadn't been to Greenwood City yet. When Zhang Meng came in front of the crowd, Chen Zhongxiong, who had been standing at the side with a smile, hurriedly waved his hand to everyone, and said loudly, "All of you, shut your mouths. Can't you see that the head bandit is here?" As soon as Chen Zhongxiong's voice fell, the noise from the crowd immediately decreased. When everyone turned around and saw Zhang Meng standing behind them, all the noise disappeared. Chen Zhongxiong walked up to Zhang Meng with a smile on his face. "Head chieftain, we're going to Greenwood City to purchase food today. Do you have any instructions for me?" Zhang Meng shook his head. "Should I go with them?" He Wenyang smiled and said, "Chief, I'm just going to purchase food. It's not a big deal. You've just returned, so take a good rest." Zhang Meng shook his head. "It's fine. I'll go with them." Chen Zhongxiong nodded. "Then let's go." This time, Chen Zhongxiong was personally leading the team to Cyanwood City to purchase food. He brought along all the youths from Twin Oxen Mountain. After all, the food they were purchasing this time was food that could save everyone's lives. If they were to encounter bandits on the way and steal the food, they would have nowhere to cry. 3 horse carriages, 5 head chieftains, and 18 youths were sent off by the villagers as they made their way to Greenwood City in a grandiose manner. Zhang Meng was the head chieftain, so he naturally had the right to ride in a horse carriage. Along the way, he sat in the horse carriage and pondered what he should do when he reached Greenwood City. First, of course, he had to buy food. The food in the mountain stronghold was about to be depleted. If he did not replenish some food, he might really starve. Next, there was the matter of the auction house. This was a big matter and must be handled with caution. Not only that, it must be done as soon as possible. Zhang Meng's main purpose in going to Greenwood City with everyone was to see if there were any talents in this area. He also wanted to find some craftsmen and have them work in the valley. Finally, he wanted to find out more information. When the auction house opened in the future, he would need a source of goods. However, Zhang Meng had no idea where to find the source of goods. Therefore, he had to find Fan Shouwu and ask him to provide him with some clues. In addition, there was the problem of sales. The terrain of the Twin Bull Mountain was so secretive. If it was not publicized, no one would know. Therefore, this was also a big matter. On the Anwu Empire's side, he could rely on Fan Shouwu, Zhang Qiuming, and the others to inquire about information and the source of goods for him. Of course, most importantly, he wanted to know through Fan Shouwu, Zhang Qiuming, and the others that the Anwu Empire needed goods. This way, he could target the goods they needed and hunt. As for the Magic Empire's side, Zhang Meng had also thought about it. Wasn't there Master Gerald at the Red Mountain Peak? Although he would not be of much use, he should be very familiar with the affairs of the Magic Empire. It should not be a big deal to let him handle the affairs there. The most important thing now was that Zhang Meng did not know what the people in these 2 places needed. Most of the items auctioned in the auction house were cultivation items. Of course, there were also some luxury items, such as the black feather cloak. Although it did not have any defensive abilities, Zhang Meng believed that there would definitely be many people who would want to give it away or buy it for their own use. Zhang Meng had no idea about these needs at all. The reason why he stayed with Fan Shouwu and the others for so long was to learn about this. As for the Magic Empire, Zhang Meng did not know anything about it. He had not even been to the cities of the Magic Empire. How would he know? Therefore, Gerard was definitely an indispensable link. As for Carter, Zhang Meng did not think that he was better than Gerard. Although Gerard's martial arts were not as good as Carter's, in terms of interpersonal skills, Gerard was definitely better than Carter. As for the construction of the auction house, he must find a few talents in construction. As for craftsmen, of course, the more the better. The more people there were, the faster the construction would be. Sitting in the swaying carriage, Zhang Meng was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Chen Zhongxiong's shout outside the carriage. Greenwood City is already in sight. Everyone, let's work harder. We don't need to rest now. Let's go there together. Yes. After hearing Chen Zhongxiong's words, Zhang Meng also hurriedly poked his head out of the carriage. In the distance, the tall walls of Greenwood City appeared in front of Zhang Meng's eyes. Looking at the walls and the city gate in the middle of the walls, Zhang Meng sighed in his heart. After so long, they finally came to a decent city. Following Zhang Meng's sigh, the group had already arrived in front of the city gate of Greenwood City. In front of the city gate there was a small group of people at the moment. They were carefully checking the passers-by and collecting some fees to enter and exit the city. There were many people in Zhang Meng's group, so naturally, they attracted the attention of this small group of people. However, they were all fellow villagers. After checking, these people began to count the number of people, collected the full amount of entrance fees, and let them enter the city. At this moment, Zhang Meng had already jumped out of the carriage. Since he had transmigrated, this was the first time he had entered a city. He had to observe carefully. Chapter 98. After entering the city, Zhang Meng got Chen Zhongxiong and the rest to buy food, while he brought Zhang Chong to walk around. Although Zhang Chong was young, he had been to Cyanwood City a few times. The reason why Zhang Meng brought him here was because he wanted him to lead the way. Looking at the endless flow of people on the streets and the many shops by the side of the road, the difference between this world and his previous world was simply too great. Regardless of whether it was the dressing of the people here, the decoration of the shops, or the ox carts and horse carriages on the streets, Zhang Meng even saw a donkey cart. Standing on this ancient street, Zhang Meng felt as though he had truly transmigrated. Although he had come into contact with many people in the Wind Forest mountain range, they were very few and he didn't have a strong feeling. Now, he had truly come to this world. After walking around for a while, Zhang Meng finally remembered why he was here. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng turned to look at Zhang Chong. "Xiao Chong, where can I find people who can build houses?" Zhang Chong heard this and shook his head. "I don't know. I've been here a few times. If I'm not selling things, I'm buying things. I haven't been anywhere else." "Is that so?" Zhang Meng was a little disappointed when he heard this. Looking at the huge Cyanwood City, where should he go to find people? Suddenly, his eyes lit up. If he didn't know, he could ask. Coincidentally, at this moment, the sound of wheels rolling could be heard from behind. Zhang Meng hurriedly turned around and saw a middle-aged man driving a horse carriage over. Seeing the person driving the carriage, Zhang Meng was instantly overjoyed. He hurriedly went up to stop the carriage and asked with a smile, "Brother, if you want to build a house, where should I find people?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, the middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He hurriedly jumped down from the carriage and cupped his hands towards Zhang Meng. "Brother, are you the one who wants to build a house?" When Zhang Meng saw this person's expression, he guessed that this person should be an artisan. "Yeah, I want to build a big house. I need to hire a lot of people. I don't know where I can find them." Hearing Zhang Meng's words, the middle-aged man's eyes became brighter. Even the corners of his mouth cracked. He said more politely, "Sir, my name is Li Liuzi. I'm also the craftsman you're looking for. I'm not bragging, but as long as you tell me the style of your house, I can definitely build it for you. I promise it will be strong and beautiful." Zhang Meng hurriedly interrupted Li Liuzi and said with a smile, "Don't brag. Tell me how many craftsmen you can find to build a house for me." Hearing this, Li Liuzi lowered his head and thought for a moment. After a while, he raised his head and asked carefully, "Young master, is 10 people okay?" Zhang Meng shook his head, "That's too little. The more people I can find, the better, because the house I'm building is very big." At this moment, Li Liuzi's face was full of smiles. Originally, he had no work to do these 2 days and was worried. He didn't expect that when he was about to go home, he would get a big job. This was a great thing. Judging from this person's posture and tone, it might take a year and a half to build a house. Thinking of this, Li Liuzi had already made up his mind. Since such a big piece of meat pie had fallen from the sky, he must not let this meat pie run away. Young master, tell me the truth. How many craftsmen do you need? I, Li Liuzi, promise to find all of them for you. Zhang Meng thought for a moment. After all, he didn't know how many people were needed to build an auction house. He only knew that the more people there were to build a house, the faster it should be. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng regretted a little. He should have brought Feng Yongfu with him to find craftsmen. Zhang Meng went forward and patted Li Liuzi's shoulder. Let's go. I'll take you to see someone. You can discuss this matter. Li Liuzi heard this and was a little disappointed. Young master, is the house not your house? Zhang Meng nodded. It is my house. However, I can't say how many people I'll use. Li Liuzi heard this and nodded. He asked tentatively, Then, are we going to look for your butler now? Zhang Meng heard this and was stunned. Then, he nodded. Although Feng Yongfu wasn't his butler, his role was similar. So, it wasn't a bad idea to let him be his butler. The three of them sat in a carriage, and went to the place where they agreed to meet Chen Zhongxiong and the others. In the carriage, Zhang Meng looked at the houses on the side of the road and wondered what kind of house he should build. What kind of house should this auction house be built in order to be unique? It should be the kind that people would be attracted to at a glance. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Li Liuzi's shoulder and asked with a smile, Brother, how long have you been in this business? Li Liuzi lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he stretched out 2 fingers and a palm and replied with a smile, 25 years? Zhang Meng was stunned when he heard this. After a while, he asked curiously, Brother, how old are you this year? Li Liuzi heard this and quickly shook his head. It's not expensive. I'm 38 years old this year. Zhang Meng heard this and quickly calculated with his fingers. Then, he asked in surprise, You've been in this business since you were 13 years old? Li Liuzi nodded. My family was poor. When I was 13 years old, my father and I started this business. Looking at Li Liuzi's arms, even though they were not thick, they seemed to be quite strong. He must have been trained since he was young. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Li Liuzi's shoulder and said with a smile, Work hard for me and I won't mistreat you. When Li Liuzi heard this, he quickly cupped his hands towards Zhang Meng and said, Thank you, young master. This lowly one will do his best to build a house for you. When Zhang Meng heard this, his heart skipped a beat and he asked, You know how to build a house? Do you know who can design a house? Design a house? Li Liuzi was quite confused. He did not quite understand what Zhang Meng meant. Seeing that he did not understand, Zhang Meng hurriedly explained. It's the design of a house. I want to build the best house, so I naturally have to design the best house. How about it? Do you know who can design the best house? Only then did Li Liuzi understand what Zhang Meng meant. He thought for a moment before replying, Actually, if you're willing to spend money, you should be able to find someone to draw the style of the house for you. When Zhang Meng heard this, he was overjoyed. This was the result he wanted. As the saying goes, there are specializations in algebra. This was definitely the hard truth. No matter how good an outsider looked, he would not be able to design it. Zhang Meng hurriedly asked, Brother, can you find me a few such people? When Li Liuzi heard this, he grinned and thought to himself, Is this person bragging? Find a few? It would be good if one of them is willing to come. Li Liuzi shook his head. I can find many ordinary craftsmen, but I don't know anyone who can draw a house. Chapter 99. Li Liuzi was flattering himself when he said that he did not know such a person. In the entire South County, there was only one shop in South County City that specialized in drawing houses. It could be said that in the entire South County, there were only a handful of people who could invite them to draw the blueprints for their houses. Li Liuzi was an ordinary craftsman. He had probably never even seen such a person, let alone know him. Seeing Liuzi shake his head, Zhang Meng asked again, "Then do you know his name and where he lives?" Li Liuzi shook his head. "I only know that his surname is Fong and he lives in South County. As for where he lives, I don't know." Hearing Liuzi's answer, Zhang Meng shook his head with a smile. He understood that Liuzi did not know either. Just as Zhang Meng was thinking about how to find someone to design a house for him, he suddenly heard Zhang Chang shout from the side, "Young master, the second chief and the others are right in front." Zhang Meng looked up. Sure enough, the 5 carriages in the village were full and were parked at the corner of the street. The chiefs of the village were all gathered together. No one knew what they were discussing. Zhang Meng jumped out of the carriage and walked towards the crowd. When Chen Zhongxiong saw Zhang Meng coming over, he hurriedly went up to him. "Chief, you're finally back. Let's go now." When Zhang Meng heard this, he looked up at the sky and said, "Second uncle, it's getting late. Why don't you let everyone stay here for the night? It's not safe to walk at night." Just as Chen Zhongxiong was about to answer, Feng Yongfu hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, there are so many of us. If we all stay here, it will cost a lot of money. It's better to keep the money to buy food." When Zhang Meng heard this, he hurriedly said, "But it's not safe to walk at night. If we encounter bandits, wouldn't that be terrible?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Chen Zhongxiong asked in confusion, "Chief, aren't you going back with us?" Zhang Meng shook his head. "I still need to find someone to draw a blueprint for the house we're going to build." Speaking of this, Zhang Meng turned his head and waved at Li Liuzi. Then, he turned his head and looked at Feng Yongfu. "Fifth uncle, this is a craftsman I found. You know, I don't know how to build a house. Anyway, you can talk with them about this matter. In these 2 days, prepare some materials and transport them back to the village. I will take this opportunity to find someone who can draw the pattern for our house." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu turned to look at Chen Zhongxiong and said, "All right, I'll talk to him. However, if we prepare the materials, I'm afraid we'll have to spend a lot of gold coins." After hearing Feng Yongfu's words, Zhang Meng smiled and waved his hand. "You go back today. I'll bring the gold coins back tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. You can go buy the materials now and try to get all the materials ready. When the blueprint of the house is down, we can start immediately." Feng Yongfu nodded. Then, after thinking for a while, he pulled Zhang Meng aside and whispered, "Little Meng, I don't object to you wanting to build an auction house in the village. However, you didn't tell me how big the house is and how much gold coins you're going to spend. How do you want me to prepare the materials?" Zhang Meng thought for a while and said, "Fifth uncle, I don't know how big the house is. In short, we need to prepare a lot of materials. I think the house we're going to build this time will definitely not be small. We'll definitely need a lot of materials. Don't run out of materials when the time comes." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng. After a while, he asked, "Little Meng, tell me how much gold coins you have so that I can buy the materials." Zhang Meng heard this and stretched out a finger. "Fifth uncle, I should be able to prepare 10,000 gold coins tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Is that enough?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu was startled at first. Then, he sucked in a breath of cold air. "Little Meng, don't joke with me. How many gold coins do you have? Tell me the real number." Zhang Meng was amused by Feng Yongfu's words. "Fifth uncle, why would I lie to you? If I say 10,000 gold coins, it's 10,000 gold coins. It's definitely not a small amount." Hearing Zhang Meng's affirmative answer, Feng Yongfu was silent for a while. Then, he slowly said, "Little Meng, although your martial arts are very good, there are some things that you can't do. If you make a mistake, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Hearing this, Zhang Meng knew that Feng Yongfu was afraid that he would use his martial arts to do bad things. That was why he reminded him. Only his own family would remind him. If it were an outsider, who would care about this kind of thing? Thinking of this, Zhang Meng hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Fifth uncle, don't think too much. You watched me grow up. Am I that kind of bad person? Don't worry. I got these 10,000 gold coins from selling things." Saying this, Zhang Meng was afraid that Feng Yongfu would not believe him, so he continued to explain, "Fifth uncle, do you know about the black feather cloak?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu nodded. "That's a good thing. I heard that after wearing it, you won't feel cold in winter or hot in summer." Saying this, Feng Yongfu suddenly stared at him. "Little Meng, do you have a black feather cloak?" Zhang Meng nodded, "Yes, I do. I exchanged the 10,000 gold coins with the feathers that could be used to make 2 black feather cloaks." 2 black feather cloaks? Hearing this, Feng Yongfu was even more surprised. He had only heard of the black feather cloak. He had never seen it before. Although he had never seen it, he had heard that the black feather cloak was not something that could be bought with money. It was something that could only be obtained with luck. Thinking of this, Feng Yongfu hurriedly asked, "Little Meng, how did you get the black feather cloak?" Zhang Meng smiled gently. "Fifth uncle, with my strength, is it difficult to hunt the nightmare eagle and get its feathers?" Hearing this, Feng Yongfu remembered the fountain in the hall of the village and could not help but nod. With Zhang Meng's terrifying strength, it should be possible for him to hunt the nightmare eagle. Seeing that Feng Yongfu had understood his meaning, Zhang Meng continued, "Don't be afraid of spending money to build the auction house. I only want the best. If the money is not enough, I will think of a way. At the very least, I can get 2 more black feather cloaks to sell. So, I say, don't build a shabby auction house for the sake of saving money." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu's old face turned red. If Zhang Tai did not remind him, he might really do it. Seeing Feng Yongfu's expression, Zhang Meng was a little worried and hurriedly reminded him again. "I say, if you build a shabby auction house for the sake of saving money, don't blame me for being angry." Hearing this, Feng Yongfu hurriedly nodded and promised, "Little Meng, in the past, the village did not have money, so I saved money. Now that we have money, what are we afraid of? Don't worry, leave the construction of the auction house to me. I will build it beautifully." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.